Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. Konoha. It came without warning. Like a hurricane of fur and teeth, it destroyed all in its path. The nine-tailed fox came from the blackness of the night and already wiped half of the country of Konoha into oblivion. Its very presence was also dangerous. Fires and earthquakes appeared wherever it walked. Its vile demonic chakra caused lesser demons to spawn in its wake. Truly, there was nothing that could stop this behemoth, until it met resistance. "Attack!" cried a random Konoha nin as they all launched an all-out assault on the fox. All threw shuriken after shuriken, kunai after kunai, ninjutsu after ninjutsu until they had exhausted themselves. And when the cloud was gone, they realized that their attacks had done nothing to the fox. It sneered as it swung one of its tails and sent a majority of them flying. Many died upon said attack. Others managed to stay alive but were seriously wounded. "We have to hold until the fourth Hokage gets here," yelled another nin. "Do whatever it takes to slow it down," yelled another as he made hand signs, and the very earth rose up and grabbed the fox, who growled in irritation as it broke free and roared, causing a shockwave that blew them back. It seemed nothing could stop this ultimate beast of destruction, until the light in the sky came. Out of nowhere, something that looked like a rift or portal opened in the sky, and everyone stopped and looked up at it, even the Kyuubi who had never seen such a thing in its existence. Then something dropped from the rift and landed with an earth-shattering quake. The creature was immense, easily 100 meters tall. Its skin was black in color, and it looked very thick, rutted, not totally unlike the bark of some ancient, giant tree. On its back stood 3 rows of jagged spines. Its eyes were a fiery orange in color, showing its animalistic nature yet also conveying a sense of unnerving intelligence. As its mouth opened, it displayed a fearsome double row of uneven teeth. Many of them were approximately 2 meters long. It let out a roar that could easily rival the Kyuubi's. For a while, nobody moved. Many were in awe of this new creature. The creature itself looked around in confusion, as if it had no idea where it was. And then it looked over the humans and ignored them and set its eyes on the fox, giving it a curious glance as to what it was. The fox suddenly growled and let out a roar of challenge as its fur stood on end, saliva dripping from its fangs. It did not like this newcomer, and it would have it dare intrude on its mission forced upon it by the masked human. The new creature eyed the fox warily. The fox was obviously disturbed by this intrusion upon his territory, at least that's what it thought. The fox roared again and waved his head back and forth, displaying his tails in the most menacing fashion possible. The creature was not going to back down from a fight, that much could be seen by anyone observing this confrontation. It roared out a challenge to the Kyuubi. It could sense a source of ambient radiation somewhere far away. It called to him like a siren. Nothing, not the humans, not this creature, was going to stand in his way. It needed to feed. The Kyuubi appeared to share in the other's determination. With a final barking yelp, it surged forward on its 4 legs, plowing through the forest that rose up to the level of its chest, sending trees flying everywhere as the Konoha nin ran for their lives. They wanted no part in this battle. The Kyuubi lowered its head and charged the much larger monster. The new creature held his ground against the oncoming fox. He was thrown back by the force of the impact as the Kyuubi slammed into him. The other monster didn't hesitate to drive its claws deep into its opponent's abdomen. The creature roared in pain as it beat the Kyuubi with its fists, and when that didn't work, the creature's spines began to glow an ominous neon blue color. A brilliant neon blue blast of energy erupted from its maw that struck the Kyuubi square on, sending it flying backwards and howling in pain. The shinobi couldn't believe it. After all their most powerful ninjutsu failed to defeat the Kyuubi, a single blast from this monster did. Surely this creature was a gift from Kami-sama that sent it to save them. That hope faded when the creature suddenly turned and fired its heat ray upon the village and caused even more destruction. The creature was now in a rampaging mode and it was about to take it out on the village. At that moment, the Kyuubi suddenly leapt onto the back of the creature and both fell to the earth and started the most savage battle the shinobi had ever seen. The 2 monsters grappled with one another, each battling fiercely. Back and forth they struggled, one gaining the advantage, only to lose it a moment later. Finally, the creature threw the fox off it and shot another heat ray at it, only for the fox to counter with its own attack. Its 9 tails stood out in straight positions as they all glue a white color, and then a ball of chakra gathered in its mouth and fired it. When the two attacks collided, it created a massive explosion that shook the earth and sent gusts of winds everywhere. The shinobi could do nothing as the savage battle continued, both monsters slamming into each other. Suddenly, there was another quake as a giant toad in a Yakuza outfit with a sheathed knife at its side had appeared. On its head was the Hokage of Konoha, Minato Namikaze. "Hokage-sama!" yelled the shinobi as they ran to his side. Minato nodded as he leaped off Gamabunta, the boss toad of the Gama clan. "Tell me, where did that other creature come from?" he asked as he held tightly to his chest a bundle of white clothing. "We have no idea, it just fell right out of the sky and started fighting the Kyuubi. They've been going at it all this time," yelled a shinobi. Minato just stared at the two battling titans as Gamabunta bit his smoke pipe. "This makes it all the more risky, Minato," said Gamabunta. "I know, I can only seal up one of those things. It's mostly the Kyuubi we'll have to seal, but what about the other one?" he asked to Gamabunta. Gamabunta just closed his eyes and exhaled smoke. "I don't know, the decision is yours, Minato-san." Suddenly a strange mode of golden light filtered down from the sky. The light circled around the battlefield a couple of times, leaving a trail of sparkles behind it. Minato's eyes followed the light's every move as it wove in and out of the men assembled behind him. Most of them simply stared dumbly at it, not having any idea what to do. The light soon swerved back and flew in front of Minato and floated there for a few seconds. There, the light faded to reveal two tiny women, no more than half a foot tall each. They wore matching orange priestess robes, and held each other's hand as they stared at Minato. Minato could only stare in amazement, and then they spoke. "Please, let us aid you in this. We understand what it is you intend to do, but in doing so will still lead to the destruction of your home if Godzilla is not sealed away as well." "Godzilla?" asked one of the shinobi. The twin fairies nodded. "Yes, that is the name of this daikuja. There is not much time. We understand your jutsu requires a soul for each sealing. Mothra offers her soul to seal up Godzilla." Minato had no time to question them how they knew this, or what this Mothra was. He had to stop this battle or else it would spell the end for Konoha if either of those monsters won. He leaped to the top of Gamabunta's head as the twin fairies followed. As of now, both Kyuubi and Godzilla had their jaws at each other's throats, both trying to reap them out. They clasped their hands together and began to sing. The haunting melody seemed to carry through the entirety of Konoha and beyond. It resonated through the sky, echoed through the civilian shelters and filled the air of Konoha village. "Ia-ie how ra. Uhae ka Missouri ya. Ia-ie how ma. Roha-e na Missouri ha. Kiri-e wa jina hai. Mili wona kamai ka." As their song continued, the twin fairies' bodies began to shine with brilliant golden light. Minato and those with him stepped back as that light filled the area and engulfed them all. Silence had fallen in the battlefield. No sound was uttered and nothing was heard, save the voices of two tiny women as they sang a song that seemed to entrance all who heard it. Minato felt tears beginning to run down his face. Never had he heard something so beautiful, so pure. It plucked a chord in his heart that he never realized he had, sending waves of hope washing across his being. Likewise, the Kyuubi and Godzilla stopped fighting and stared at the two tiny fairies. The Kyuubi seemed mesmerized. The singing was causing it to fall into stupor. Godzilla on the other hand seemed more annoyed than entranced, as if he knew exactly who these two were. Minato then shook his head as he made the hand signs for the dead demon-consuming seal. Behind him came the Shinigami, ghostly and frightening. Also came was something else, another daikuja summoned by the tiny fairies. Mothra was a creature of tremendous size, with a wingspan even more larger. And yet, there was a certain delicate aspect to Mothra that belied her size. The kaiju's body was covered in a light fuzz of various colors. Her wings were a mosaic of equally brilliant hues. Two sky blue eyes, having the appearance of well-cut sapphires, shone from Mothra's head like azure beacons. Beneath those eyes, a pair of black mandibles opened and released a piercing keen. "Dead demon-consuming seal," yelled Minato as the Shinigami reached out and sank its arm into Minato's body and Mothra's. Two arms of chakra then reached out and grasped both Kyuubi and Godzilla. The Kyuubi snapped of its stupor instantly and tried to escape, but to no avail. The chakra arm then dragged out a reddish cloud of energy and then it flew straight for the bundle of clothing in Minato's arms. The fox's body fell to the earth and it disintegrated into dust. As Godzilla, it seemed to have accepted this as its soul was torn from its body, and was about to be consumed by the Shinigami, when at the last second, it sent a surge of power that struck the Shinigami and everyone swore they thought they saw a look of pain and confusion upon its face. The blue cloud of energy that was Godzilla's soul then vanished into the night sky, never to be seen again. With the sealing done, the Shinigami then took Mothra and Minato's souls, but not before a tiny moth flew from Mothra's body and flew to the fairy's side. Minato felt his life ebbing away. "Thank you, Dot, for your help," he said as he fell upon Gamabunta's head, who grasped him and the small bundle of clothing as he mourned Minato's death in silence. The fairies nodded as they had done what they had come to do. There was only one more task to do. Find Mothra an avatar for her rebirth. Yes, Mothra had died, but not before she had transferred all her memory and powers into a fairy Mothra, the tiny moth that the Shobain rode upon. Mothra's body then burst into flames and disappeared. All the while, the shinobi were now realizing that Minato had sacrificed his life for them, and all of them were mourning his death as the two fairies flew off. Suddenly, the small bundle of cloth that held a child within glowed red due to the vast energies contained within the tiny infant's body. Inside was a small crying baby boy. They soon realized that it was the demon in human form. As that realization sinked in, they began to hate and loathe the child, thinking it was nothing more than the demon in a human shape. "Damn demon," one ninja said. One ninja grabbed the child and yelled, "Let's kill it now before it kills us all." "No," yelled a voice as they found their previous Hokage with two of the Sannin trio. "You are not allowed to touch this child," he said as he took the boy away from them and handed it to Tsunade, who cooed at the child as it awoke slightly. "You all know the reasons why Minato chose this. This boy is not guilty of any crimes. For you to kill him would be like spitting in the face of the fourth Hokage himself," yelled Sarutobi as the nin all got looks of despair on their faces. "We are not to speak of this. No one is to know what the child holds, for who knows what would happen if such word reached the wrong ears," he said as he felt a sinister chakra signature nearby. It felt very familiar, like one of the Uchiha clans, and then it was gone as Sarutobi sighed in relief. "For now, we must tend to the wounded and rescue any trapped civilians. Tsunade, please look after the child while Jiraiya and I handle this situation," said Sarutobi as he and Jiraiya leap off to look for survivors. Tsunade nodded as the child fell back to sleep again. Meanwhile, the Shobaijin flew over what remained of the village and found themselves at the Hyuga Manor. Something told them that they were needed here. Inside they found a Hyuga woman holding a child to her chest, tears streaming down her eyes as from what they could sense, there was no life in the child. She was coughing slightly. Her skin was very pale and her breathing was irregular. Apparently, the Kyuubi's attack had caused some sort of illness to befall the child, and her life was slowly ebbing away. How sad that they had lived through the attack, only for this to befall on the child. The Shobaijin then nodded, they knew what to do. "Excuse us," they asked, causing the woman to look up and search for the voices, only to gasp as her eyes saw the Shobaijin. "Is there something wrong with your child?" asked one of them. The mother was hesitant to speak. And then she answered, "I'm not sure what's wrong with her. The Kyuubi passed by and all of a sudden, she started coughing. Several of our other clan members started coughing too and then they died. I'm afraid the same thing will befall my little angel. I don't want her to die." She screamed as she held her baby close as tears fell down her face, and the child coughed again. "We can cure her of this," they said. The woman then looked up and then shouted, "Please, save her. I don't want my little Hinata to die." The two Shobaijin nodded and clasped their hands as they began to sing, their melody starting to fill the room. Misura ya Misura, Dongan Kasakuyan Indo Mu, Rusuto Uiradoa, Hanba Hanba Muyan, Ronda Banunraden Tonyukenra, Kasaku Yanmu. Fairy Mothra blew and landed upon little Hinata's forehead and flashed for a sec before she left the spot, leaving a mark on her forehead. Immediately, the young baby stopped coughing and started to regain color in her cheeks. She seemed content and was breathing normally. Her mother was aghast with shock and then happiness. "Oh my little angel, She cried as she could not even begin to thank the Shobijin, but they were gone. In the night sky, the Shobijin flew on fairy Mothra, somewhat disturbed at what they had just done. They had not just saved the baby, they had infused it with the power left over from Mothra's death. They were not sure if it was the right thing to do. But they had a feeling Konoha would need the power of Mothra in the far future. Meanwhile, in the deepest parts of the forest, a small child wandered in the darkness. His skin somewhat grayish, his hair white and fiery eyes held a lot more intellect than they should have. He had suffered many battle wounds, many defeats, and even a few close calls. But not compared to this was just downright embarrassing. But in time, he would return, even if he looked like one of those stinking humans, he would return. For Godzilla, being in human form was merely a setback. The king of monsters would return. Ever since the attack by the Kyuubi, other sightings were becoming quite common. The one thing in common was that none of these creatures were tailed beasts, they just suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and then seemingly disappeared as well. Rumors of a gargantuan shrimp swimming around the land of wave, as well as a large finned dinosaur living in the depths of the sea. In the land of Earth, there were rumors of a horde of man-eating birds that only appeared at night, but then they disappeared as well. Some say they moved to the land of waves. There were also rumors of the Hachibi almost losing to this horde, and it took his brother and the Neko no Nibi to drive them off. Along with these hordes of birds were rumors of an egg found deep within a mountainside, and that day later, the egg hatched and whatever was in it had already fled. In the land of mist, there were tales of a creature making loud and haunting bellowing cries into the mist, as if it were calling out to something, or someone, but soon after, it too disappeared. There were also rumors of a strange metal object that lay beneath the oceans surrounding the land of mist. Attempts to try to get into it or even activate it resulted in death, as if some unknown specter did not want them to wake it up. More and more of these rumors went on, and eventually became mere folktales that adults used to scare their children to sleep. They did not know just how true they were. Deep in the forests of Konoha, the almighty king of monsters had been slowly regaining power. Ever since those damn humans used their dimension tide weapon on him, he had been imprisoned in this world as a human. At first, he had his body, but after that battle with the strange fox creature, he ended up having to possess the body of a dead child, using his G-cells and radioactive energy to reanimate it and breathe life back into it. What befuddled him was how he was going to return to his original form, but in his mind, he knew either the fox creature knew, or that accursed traitor to Daikaja kind, Mothra, knew. He'd get his answer, even if he had to wring the damn moth out like a bloody rag to get it. As for the fox, he and the fox had unfinished business they needed to settle. Konoha Village, the present time. Naruto had always been considered the dead last in class, but ever since the new kid came in, he seemed like a genius compared to him. This kid had absolutely no idea on how or what ninjutsu or any of the shinobi arts. Many of the other students were laughing at him, yet he seemed to shrug it off, as if he was the one looking down on them. His name was Takuya Daigohira, a supposed transfer student that one day just showed one day, and spoke with the Hokage for an entire day. Nobody knew what he told him, but the boy ended up being enlisted into the academy. Despite his lack of knowledge of ninjutsu or genjutsu, he seemed to excel at taijutsu. He even managed to beat the pants off the top-class student, Sasuke Uchiha. Standing at close to his height, somewhat grayish skin, white hair, and fiery and intimating orange eyes, he scared the crap out of anyone who even looked at him funny. Hell, even the teachers were scared of him. One time at lunch, a kid threw a muffin at his head. The next day, the kid ended up with 6 broken ribs, third-degree burns, and a bunch of dislocated limbs. He was told that if he told them who did it, he'd die a painful and slow death. He never showed any respect for the teachers. He was rude, and loud when he wanted to be, not to mention he ate more than even Choji Akamichi, and mostly stared off outside at the sky. None of the other students even attempted to communicate with him, and he preferred it that way. He did however seem to show a sort of, Naruto couldn't call it kindness, more like a grudging respect for him, along with the class invisible girl, Hinata Hyuga. Naruto wasn't sure why. In the year before he got into his own squad, Neji Hyuga tried to kill Hinata, but thanks to the timely intervention of Takuya, Neji ended up in the emergency room. He warned Hinata to never lose to someone, for it was shameful to their kind, but Hinata had no idea what he was talking about. He only spoke to Naruto once, and that was when Takuya saved his ass from Mizuki-sensei who almost killed him and Iruka. But not before Naruto kicked his ass with the Kage Bushin no Jutsu. Mizuki however was about to counterattack, but not before Takuya seemingly out of nowhere knocked him out cold with a dropkick. Afterwards, he warned Naruto to not let anyone beat him, not until he got his chance at him. Naruto had no idea what he was talking about. And here he was waiting for his sensei to show up, along with the class heartthrob, Sasuke Uchiha, and one of his fangirls, Sakura Haruno. Due to the lack of Jonin available, Takuya had to be assigned to his squad, a 5-man squad, rather unheard of. However, it didn't excuse the fact that their teacher was late. Sasuke was brooding in a corner, Sakura was busy with her hair, and Takuya was busy napping. Naruto on the other hand was getting frustrated. All the other genin had left with their teachers, where the hell was theirs? How is it that our Jonin is late? What in the world could he be doing? Yelled Naruto as he got up from his seat and walked over to the door, grabbed the nearest thing, an eraser, and placed it up on the top of the door. Naruto, what are you up to now? Asked Sakura. Punishing our Jonin for being so late, he said with a snicker. I swear Naruto, you act like such a kid sometimes. She said, but inner Sakura was saying, yeah, I love these kinds of pranks. As if a Jonin would fall into such a simple trap, thought Sasuke. Suddenly the door opened and a silver-haired man walked in, and the eraser fell onto his head, and onto the floor below. Naruto burst out laughing that his little prank worked. Sakura was apologizing and placing the blame on Naruto. Sasuke was just staring at the Jonin. Based on my first impression, I'd have to say, I hate all of your guts. He said as the 3 genin gave him deadpan looks. Takuya suddenly woke up and gave the Jonin a blank stare. Alright, meet me on the roof, we'll talk more up there. He said as he disappeared in a poof of smoke. The 4 genin walked in somewhat silence as Naruto was going on and on about how he'd become Hokage one day. Sasuke was busy brooding and Sakura was trying to make conversation with him. Takuya just remained silent. Out of a moment of curiosity, Sakura tried to talk to him. So, how long have you been living in the village? 2 years, he muttered in an angry tone. Oh, so where have you been living all this time? She asked. Takuya just waved his hand at the village gates. Out there. Out there in the forest. Wow, you must have had it rough. Do you have any parents? She asked. No, muttered Takuya. Now Sakura was getting irritated. You know, would it kill ya to say a little bit more than just 1 or 2 words? Takuya suddenly pounded his fist into a wall, causing cracks to appear. Shut up or I'll rip your face off. That enough words for you? He asked her as he glared at her with his orange eyes. Sakura gave him a nervous smile and backed away. Geez, this guy must be psychotic or something, she muttered to Sasuke. He's just angry, he said. Sakura gave him a questioning look. How do you know? I know rage when I see it, and I can see it clearly in his eyes. Said Sasuke, if any of us were to snap under pressure during a mission, it'd be him, so watch your back. He said as they made it to the roof. Their Jonin was there sitting on the edge of the building reading an orange book. All good, you all made it. He said as he put the book away. All 4 of the genin sat down as they all waited for their Jonin to continue. Now, before we do anything serious, I'd like to get to know you all better. He said. How so? Asked Naruto. Oh your hobbies, dreams, all that. He said. Why don't you go first, sensei? We know absolutely nothing about you. Said Sakura. Oh, well, I'm Kakashi Hitaki. My dreams for the future are none of your business. My goals are better left unsaid, but I do have a lot of hobbies. Okay, you next, Pinky. He said with a wave of his hand. Geez, all we learned was his name. Muttered Naruto as Sakura cleared her throat. My name is Sakura Haruno, my hobbies are stalking Sasuke, said Takuya with a smirk. Sakura gave him a glare as she continued. My dreams for the future are to become Sasuke's mate and bear his bastard children, who no doubly will have pretty pink hair like you. Said Takuya with another smirk as Naruto burst out laughing. Sakura was now seething while Sasuke was shivering in fear. His sons or daughters, with pink hair? He'd never live it down. What would his brother say if he ever saw such a sight? Daydream. Sasuke stood ready for battle as Itachi stood like a statue. "So, you've come to kill me, have you, my little brother?" asked Itachi. "Yeah, and I'm not alone," said Sasuke as suddenly blurs of pink jumped in, 3 little boys with bright pink hair. Itachi's eyes were wide open. "You brought little girls to our fight, brother?" "We're not girls, we're boys," yelled one of the little boys. Itachi was silent for a moment before a grin spread across his face, and then exploded into pure laughter, and Itachi laughed and laughed until he fell over, and he died laughing. End daydream. Note to self, never sleep with Sakura, thought Sasuke. Great a fangirl, thought Kakashi. "Okay, you in the orange jumpsuit," said Kakashi as he pointed at Naruto. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki, my hobbies include gardening, trying new types of ramen, eating ramen, collecting ramen merchandise, training, pulling pranks, and my dreams for the future is to become the Hokage, the greatest Hokage that ever lived," he said. "Interesting, other than the fact he's a ramen addict, he's got an interesting dream," thought Kakashi. "Okay, you," he said waving to Sasuke. Sasuke said nothing at first, he was still in shock over having kids with pink hair. "Hello?" asked Kakashi. "Huh? Oh, yes, my name is Sasuke Uchiha. My dreams and goals for the futures are none of your business. There's not a lot of things I like, but I hate a lot of things." He then stared at Sakura's pink hair and shivered for a sec. "But I do have one dream. There's someone I have sworn to kill," he said before he was done. "Sasuke is so hot," thought Sakura. "Revenge, huh?" thought Kakashi. "Hope he ain't talking about me," thought Naruto. "Does he realize his hair resembles the backside of a chicken?" thought Takuya. "Okay, you with the gray skin," he said pointing to Takuya. Takuya raised an eyebrow. "Me? Oh yes, I am Takuya Daigohira. My hobbies include fighting, swimming, eating, fighting, sleeping, fighting, and of course fighting. Did I mention I like to fight? Oh yes, my dreams for the future." He took a glance at Naruto, "to finish what I started, and to go back to my original home. But I do have a dislike. I dislike one thing, those who fight dishonorably. Seems to me he's a battle junkie, best keep an eye on him," thought Kakashi. "Okay, now that we know each other a little better, here's what we're going to do. We'll meet up tomorrow at Training Ground 10. We're gonna have a little exercise to determine whether you 4 have what it takes to be shinobi. I also advise you not to eat breakfast, unless you want to lose it," said Kakashi as he smiled with his eye and then leap off to go read his Icha Icha Paradise novels. "Well, I'm off," said Takuya as he started to leave, but not before giving another glance at Naruto. "Is this kid really the jailer of my rival? Well, the moment that bastard shows his face, we're gonna finish what we started," thought Takuya. His anger subsided, and was replaced with anticipation. The day they would finish their fight was near. If living in the wild with this body taught him anything, it's to be patient. Good things come to those who wait. Elsewhere, in the depths of the space-time continuum, they had long awaited the day they would find their hated rival. For too long they had been defeated over and over, always losing to him. Not anymore. This time, the king of monsters would fall. And the king of terror would take his place as the most powerful Daikaja of them all. The king of terror will have his revenge. Elsewhere, along the forests of death, ever since the death of their queen at the hands of the king of monsters, the swarm had to find a new home and choose a new queen. They had found a home in the forest of death, as the humans around here called it. But after for so long coming into hiding, the accursed king of the monsters had returned, and then disappeared 13 years ago. For now, their queen was safe. They had no intention of fighting back, but their new queen required fresh energy to mature from her larva form to her pupa form. It'd be a few more months before they had to go and collect fresh energy. Lucky for them, most of the humans around here had fresh energy stored in their bodies. It was only a matter of time. The queen of the swarm would fly once again. Elsewhere, in the dunes of the Land of Wind, a scouting party of Suna Nin had located the remains to what they called a relic of a time before the great shinobi world. A large crust-covered mummy of some ancient creature. From they could tell, its face was avian in nature, and also seemed to have a pair of blades for hands. Whatever it was, the Suna Nin knew the case cage would be very interested in it. The Land of Waves. A small boy walked across the beaches of his home. He had long given up hope that somehow, his home would remain in its povish state, so long as that man remained, along with his so-called demon of the mist, and it didn't help that those strange red birds suddenly decided to make a home out of one of the abandoned villages. It didn't help that his grandfather was still clinging to hope. According to his grandfather, a long time ago, there was a creature that defended the land of waves from evil. No cage or biju could match it in strength. With that creature defending their home, the people of the land of waves lived in peace for a long time. But one night, a surprise attack by those flying birds nearly cost his grandfather's life, and the creature gave its life to save him. But after its death, more of the flying birds came and wiped out one of the surrounding villages, and made it a new breeding ground for themselves. Occasionally they would take and eat people from the other villages, but then the man came and offered them safety. With his demon, he managed to contain the birds to that part of the land. They all lived in peace, so it seemed. Soon the man started taking over shipping lanes and trade posts, and started taxing the villagers for passage, but no one could afford to leave. The man named Gato was sucking them dry. If they refused, he would unleash the horde of man-eating birds upon them. Inari sometimes wished that that big creature would come back and make Gato go away, but that was just wishful thinking. Inari sat upon the beach drawing circles in the sand with a stick, before something caught his eye. A yellow egg was floating along the waves. Its color was a splash of amber and yellow, giving it a distinct coloring. Out of curiosity, Inari grabbed the small egg, and held it in his hand. It felt warm in his palm, and Inari smiled, and wondered, where did this egg come from? Suddenly, it started to shake as Inari gasped. The egg was hatching. From it came a squeal as something pushed its way free from its home, a turtle. Inari's eyes were filled with awe as the small infant crawled out of the shell and landed on the sand below on its back. "Oh, I'm sorry," said Inari as he quickly placed the eggshell remains in his pocket, and scooped up the little turtle. "Are you okay?" asked Inari, but we wasn't really expecting a reply, but it did squeak in response. "That's funny, I've never seen any turtles around here before," muttered Inari as the small turtle made a sneezing noise, and was back on its back, and Inari could see strange markings on the underside of its shell. "Mama doesn't like it when I bring pets home, but I can't just leave you here," said Inari as he started walking home with the baby turtle. "Don't worry, I'll protect you, Gamera," said Inari as he named it after the creature in his grandfather's tale. "Hopefully we don't run into any gouts on the way home," thought Inari as occasionally one of those flying beasts managed to sneak out of the mist made to contain them, and eat everything in its path. And thus Inari and Gamera began their journey home. Konoha village. For a while now, Hinata had been having strange dreams and nightmares. She wasn't sure what to make of them. Death, destruction, the scent of burning flesh, the slaughtered remains of her loved ones, the towering shadowy figures that stood over the burning village of Konoha, and other times, of a certain period of time when her mother died. And yet in her other dreams, she felt warmth, love, and power fill her being. In this particular dream, she was a tiny moth that flew into the skies, free of any fears and worries, and she was not alone. A golden kitsune with beautiful blue eyes and whisker marks on his face flew with her, his paws aflame with blue fire as it levitated him into the sky. Below she could see many other different creatures, each more unique and different than the next. Many resembled giant insects and animals. Others wore the faces of those she saw every day, namely her fellow genin. One in particular caught her attention. A gray-skinned man in dark robes and what looked like a crown made of bone upon his head sat upon a throne, like a king. Hinata could only assume these dreams were some sort of foreshadowing. She already interpreted the fox to be Naruto, yet what did it mean? What did it mean for her to have the form of a moth? What did the death and destruction mean? Who were those shadowy figures that had laid waste to her home in her dreams? But one thing was always the same in the dreams. A beautiful haunting melody that always rang in her mind. She snapped out of her daydreaming as she heard her father calling her. Hiashi Hyuga, current elder of the Hyuga clan, came about a corner of the hallway and motioned for her to follow him. While he had dismissed her as heir to the Hyuga clan, Hinata was still his daughter, and Hiashi hoped that she would improve before the elders decided to make her a branch member of the clan. If she didn't, she'd really prove to be a waste of time. Today he would see if she had made any progress in her training. She would have to fight her younger sister, Hanabi, to do so. They came into a dojo where Hanabi and a couple of the elders were already waiting. "All good, you've arrived," said one of them. "Hiashi, if you would, said the other as Hiyashi nodded and took a seat next to them as Hinata walked to the opposite end of the dojo while trying to avoid eye contact with her younger sister. She knew that Hanabi didn't like this as much as she did, but they had no choice, they had to follow the traditions of the clan. She still remembered the day her father found out she had been assigned to Team Kurenai. Flashback. Your daughter has been assigned to be under my command, Kurenai told Hiyashi in the training room of the Hyuga estate. Hanabi stood in front of them, kunai in hand, panting and climbing to her feet. Hinata is supposed to be the heiress of the Hyuga clan. As a genin, she will constantly be in danger, and faces injury, even death. Are you certain this is what you want? Do with her as you will, Hiyashi snapped. His temperament had become distinctly annoyed as soon as Kurenai had set foot inside the estate. Though it could be explained away by the fact that anything having to do with his elder daughter was nothing but a waste of his time, the hostility with which he regarded the Jonin defied even that explanation. She is a failure, and useless to the clan. She cannot even measure up to her own little sister, who is 5 years her junior. Kurenai's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't speak angrily. I see. If there is nothing else to discuss, then leave, commanded Hiyashi. You are in my way, and there is much work to be done. As you wish. Kurenai turned around and left the room, only to find Hinata leaning against the wall just outside the doorway. She looked grief-stricken, and a single tear fell from her eye and landed on the floor. End of flashback. That day, her father had broken her heart. You may begin, said one of the elders as the sisters both took up the traditional stances for the Hyuga clan's gentle fist taijutsu. Both stared down each other as their bloodlines, the Byakugan, were activated. After a few moments of silence, both of them charged at each other. Hanabi swung one of her palms at Hinata, who in turn rose her own palm to divert it to the side, and she ducked to avoid a high kick from her sister. Hiyashi mentally groaned as Hanabi started to push her sister back with swift and powerful blows. It seemed that Hinata was more of a defensive fighter than offensive like her sister. He also made note that she was more flexible than her sister, but flexibility could only do so much. Hinata then somehow managed to turn the tables as she started to swing her palms more fiercely and with more control as Hanabi was forced back as she managed to avoid a blow to her stomach, but it turned out to be a feint as Hinata's left palm was going straight for her face. This was only meant to scare her and move her back, and as Hinata predicted, Hanabi managed to dodge it and avoid damage, but something happened that nobody expected. Hanabi suddenly screamed as she grabbed her face. Hiyashi quickly rose up and rushed to his daughter as Hinata looked on in fright. Hanabi tore at something at her face, a milky white substance that she apparently got all over her face. It came out of her hand, yelled Hanabi as she threw the substance to the floor. Hiyashi reached down and touched it. It feels and looks like silk, he asked Hinata, but she was nowhere to be seen. Outside the Hyuga estate, Hinata stumbled through the small forest on the outskirts of the Leaf Village. She wasn't heading for any one spot in particular, but she continued as fast as she could. She needed to be alone, she had to get as far away from everyone else as possible. She had bottled up her emotions, and now she felt herself going crazy. She couldn't take it anymore. Her dreams, worrying about Naruto, who totally ignored her as of now. A couple days ago a few girls taunted her for her lack of long hair, her father saying that she was nothing to the clan, the memories of her mother dying before her, always haunting her in her dreams. She simply couldn't handle the mixed-up, pent-up emotions stirring within her. She had snapped. She had to release somehow. Hinata was in a state of panic. Just where in the world did this come from? She thrust her palm at a tree and instantly the trunk was covered in silk. She looked at her palm, and there was nothing there. What could this mean? Could it be some sort of daze? Some sort of horrible daze that Kami decided to torment her with, as if her mother dying before her eyes at the age of 3 wasn't torment enough? As if being stripped of her position as heir to the clan and tossed aside like a broken kunai wasn't enough? She stopped at the foot of a large tree and screamed. Her knees buckled and she collapsed to the ground. She screamed and sobbed and cried for all it was worth, until her throat felt hoarse. She stood up again and leaned up against the trunk of the tree, feeling an overwhelming sense of depression and hopelessness. Without thinking, she suddenly began punching the trunk of the tree furiously, sobbing as she did so. Her fists became a bloody mess, but she could barely feel any pain. Silk spilled all over the trunk, mixing with her blood. She continued punching as hard and as long as she could, until it felt like she could hardly move her fingers. When that happened, she collapsed to the ground again, a mess. Tears streamed down her face, blood and silk were all over her hands and arms, and she felt sick. All thoughts of this were on pause as a figure fell out of tree and hit his head on a rock, and broke it. "Ya. Never again. Never sleep in trees again, ya fool," said Takuya as he rubbed his head, which was now sporting a nasty bruise. "Takuya-kun," said Hinata as the gray-skinned, white-haired boy noticed her, and then gave her his usual glare. "Oh, it's you. The heck are you doing here?" he asked. Hinata just stuttered her words as Takuya waited for an answer, staring at her with his blazing orange eyes. "Never mind, not any of my business. My home is your home," he said with a bow. She glanced at him. "Your home?" "Yes, I live out here." "Got a problem with that?" he asked as he got up and started to walk, and then he noticed her hands. "Whoa. Quite a bit of damage you did there. Follow me, let's clean ya up," he said as he grabbed her and took her to a nearby creek and began to wash the blood and silk away from her hands. "You know, punching a tree until your fists are a bloody mess. Not the best way to vent your anger," he said as he leapt into a nearby tree and then came down with a backpack. He went through it as he pulled out a wad of bandages and started to patch up her hands. "I'm fine, you don't have to help me," she lied. "I'm sorry, did you just refuse help from the king?" asked Takuya with a twitch in his eye. "King?" she asked, curious at his little statement. "Yes, I am. Never mind, I'm starting to get into a whole other mindset there," he said as he folded his arms and just stared at Hinata. He sniffed a few times at her and then pulled back. "You're upset because of the silk?" he asked, which caused her to nod a little. "But it's not just the silk, is it?" he asked, and again she nodded. Hinata's face just grew more sad as tears started to well up in her eyes. So many things had gone wrong in her life, now this was the breaking point. Takuya just frowned a bit as he said, "I'm not that much of a people person. But for you can tell me what's wrong." Hinata wiped a tear as she said, "Why? Why would you go out of your way to listen to me?" More tears began to appear and run down her face. "Mostly out of respect for you," he said. "But why do you respect me? I'm nobody, I'm weak, I'm too shy, I can't say a sentence to others without stuttering. I'm not even worth anything to my clan that I'm considered worthless to them. My own family. Now this silk coming out of my pea-palms. It's just too much, it'd probably be best if I just die." The sound of a hand slapping a face was heard as Hinata felt a stinging pain across her cheek. Takuya had a face of pure rage. "Enough. A daikaja of your status should never speak that way of yourself, especially considering exactly who you are." He then grabbed her by the shoulders. "What you are, Hinata, is nothing but a larva right now. But in time, like the caterpillar that eventually becomes a moth, you will become strong. You will become someone of value." Hinata just stared at him. "But my family believes that I..." "Now you clean the wax of your ears, little girl, and listen well. Don't believe in what others believe in you. Don't believe in the me, or what anyone else says. Believe in the Hinata who believes in you," he said as the depth of his words struck something in Hinata. Mind you, she didn't clearly understand, yet they made sense in a way. The next time someone looks down on you, you get in their face and you say, "Just who the hell do you think I am?" and show them that you don't give a damn about what they say. "Let the fires of your womanly pride combust into a raging inferno," he said as his eyes quite literally burst of flame and he looked like he was on fire. Or maybe it was just an illusion, like how Hinata once saw Might Guy hugging that Lee kid on a beach. Yet Takuya meant it. He emitted an aura of passion and hot-blooded power that it seemed to wash away her doubts and worries. "What you have, Hinata, is not a curse, but a gift. Don't be afraid to show the world. While I have no idea about what goes on in your family, and I have no idea what's happened to you in the past, but I know the past can hurt you. But the way I see it, you can either run from, or accept it. In some cases, you can even learn from it," he said as he bit at his finger. For a 12-year-old, Takuya surprisingly knew a lot, and Hinata felt that he was right. She needed to build up her confidence, but there was one thing that bothered her. "Takuya-kun, about that word you used to call me. What's a daikaja?" she asked, and Takuya's body went rigid. EHHH. Oh, look at the time, I need to go wash my hair. Bye, and consider this little pep talk we had. he said as he leapt into the creek and swam away downstream. What a strange boy, thought Hinata as she dried her tears and decided to head back home. She needed to stop fearing what would happen to her. She needed to stand up for herself. While it still saddened her that her mother died, she realized her mother wouldn't have wanted her to remember her this way. She would become strong, for her mother, for Naruto, for her family, and for herself. As for Takuya, his reasons for helping Hinata truly was somewhat out of respect for her. It was mainly because she promised to be a challenging opponent one day. Her body housed the powers of the Queen of Daikaja, a title that the original didn't like, but as with all creatures of battle, that was what she was known to by her peers. He couldn't wait for that day. Just as he was reveling in his thoughts, a hole opened up in the sky, and a flaming meteor flew off towards a certain village hidden in sound. Otto Village. The sky was just beginning to darken as the glowing meteor plunged downward. Below it laid Otto. As the meteor continued to descend, its already red-hot surface seemed to glow even brighter from some sort of unearthly power within. Even when seen from the safety of Orochimaru's hidden lair, the snake Sanin, secure under hundreds of feet of solid rock and more than 20 plates of metal and concrete, it was a daunting sight. Orochimaru felt the slightest chill run down his spine at the sensations he was receiving from the rock that he wasn't even aware of till now. They weren't anything that could be linked to any of the 5 human senses, but rather a general sense of foreboding and a recognizing of the unimaginable evil encased in that vessel of stone. One didn't even need to be a ninja to sense that much. The dark energy that radiated from the mass of stone was palpable even to those who had no notion of the sixth sense. The roaring meteor then stopped moving and hovered high above the village, as if waiting for something. Orochimaru and Kabuto rushed out from the base to see the giant rock floating above. "What in the name of Kami is that?" screamed Orochimaru. I don't know, yet. It feels strangely, as if it's pulling me in," said Kabuto as he continued to stare at the rock. "I can feel it too," as if. Suddenly Orochimaru noticed around him that the trees and plants were dying, and a faint wisp of green energy was flowing towards the rock. "It's absorbing all the life force around it," yelled Orochimaru with a smile. "Fascinating, I must find out how it's doing this," said Orochimaru as he closed his eyes and concentrated, expanding his chakra to allow him to see into the heart of this thing. Gradually, he felt his ties with his form loosening, and his consciousness catapulted outwards, leaving his physical body far behind. While he couldn't actually see it happening, Orochimaru felt his mind leaving the boundaries of his mind and heading out into the darkness that lay beyond. Out there, he encountered what he was looking for. It glowed like a great black beacon to his mental eyes, an oxymoron if he had ever seen one. Its soul was darkness incarnate. Never before in his life had Orochimaru sensed something so innately evil. It chilled him to the very center of his being. "I am more than prepared," he thought to himself, his stubbornness and ego providing the will to continue. "I am more than a match for a mindless brood of whatever this is." With that last thought, Orochimaru plunged in, shaping his probe like a lance of psychic energy and sending it streaking into the center of the dark mass. It only took a fraction of a second for the unfortunate Sanin to realize the depth of his mistake. The instant he had penetrated into the dark mind, his foe responded with terrible power. A backlash of dark energy smashed into Orochimaru's mind and sent him reeling. Even as he was still recovering, a second attack followed upon the heels of the first, threatening to consume his conscious self altogether. Fortunately, Orochimaru managed to weather the second blow. He mustered all of his strength and continued inwards, hoping to plow past any more mental defenses. Surprisingly, no further attacks came his way. As Orochimaru pushed deeper into the creature's mind, he felt a dramatic increase in power. Finally, when the human reached the center of the great rock's consciousness, he was nearly knocked away by the sheer energy that emanated from the center of the rock's being. It was only then that Orochimaru realized that this thing was a living being, a creature of great and terrible power, and it not even aware of him yet. The attacks he had felt on the outskirts of this thing's mind must have been a reflexive defense. Orochimaru cringed inwardly when he tried to envision what kind of attack the beast would be capable of should he become fully aware of Orochimaru's presence. It was at that moment that he noticed that the mind had suddenly become quite aware of him. In that instant, the counterattack plunged him directly into blackness. Back in the real world, Orochimaru's body was sent flying backwards as if something slammed into him. Kabuto was about to call out and aid him, then the temperature in the area seemed to plunge. So shocked was he at the sudden change, that the Otto Nin nearly dropped to his knees. Goosebumps formed across his skin and his hair stood on end as some sort of powerful negative force seemed to flood the area. It was a chill that struck his very soul. Behind him, a couple of Otto Nin who came to investigate the situation were experiencing a very similar chill. One completely lost her grip on the kunai she was holding, dropping the whole thing to the floor. The other seemed to foam at the mouth. Inside the base, the sound four also were affected. Takuya's reaction was even more dramatic. She seized the edge of the table she was sitting at with both her hands as her muscles tensed. The girl fought against the impending convulsions in her stomach as it threatened to reject a breakfast she had not yet consumed. Takuya felt the bile rising in her throat and would have tried to run to the bathroom to release it had that same sensation not completely frozen her in place. Sakin gasped and dropped to his knees and felt his blood turn into ice. The whole thing threatened to stop his and his brother's hearts altogether. Gathering up his willpower, Sakin struggled against the sensation, attempting to force it off him with the strength of his will. But, he slowly felt his defenses weakening beneath the crushing force of whatever it was behind this strange attack. All across Otto, people were experiencing that same sensation. It was as if someone had dropped a bomb of pure negative energy. Humans throughout the city felt as if their souls were being frozen. For some, the awesome attack was too much to bear. The elderly, the weak of heart and mind. Many children were struck down by the powerful mental blast that reverberated throughout the city and radiated across most of the village. Then, in an instant, the strange power vanished and everything seemed normal again. Orochimaru then awoke and shaking his head, "Damn that thing!" he shouted as Kabuto checked him for injuries. "You were quite lucky that your psyche wasn't shattered altogether," scolded Kabuto. "That counterattack was so powerful that it engulfed the entire city as well as yourself. It even ended several lives. You think I care about the villagers?" he asked with bloodlust in his eyes. "If you want to obtain the world's jutsu through them, I would say yes," said Kabuto as he fixed his glasses. Point talk, Orochimaru's sentence was cut off as the rock suddenly moved and crashed nearby, again throwing the Sannin and his follower to their knees. It landed well outside the city limits. However, the vibrations of its impact were powerful enough to be felt all the way down inside the Orochimaru's base. Shockwaves radiated out from the epicenter, wiping away trees and vegetation all around the area where it hit. The shockwaves eventually broke over the outskirts of Otto, toppling dozens of buildings and reducing them into rubble in less than a second. Orochimaru gritted his teeth as he bit into his finger. Summoning technique. He cried as a large snake appeared and Orochimaru leapt upon its head. The snake then slithered towards the impact site as Kabuto and several recovering Otto Nin followed. Soon they came to the impact site, and found the rock. From what he could see, the meteor was mostly intact. Even large meteors normally vaporized on impact, leaving little or nothing behind. Furthermore, the impact radius was far too small for an object of that mass. That indicated that the meteor had hit at a vastly reduced velocity than it should have hit with. He didn't like this at all. There was something down there. "You three, go and investigate that thing," yelled Orochimaru as the three Otto Nin were hesitant to go near it. "I said move," yelled Orochimaru with as much venom in his voice that the three Nin leapt away in fear. They soon came upon the rock and after few minutes, began to relax as nothing happened. Suddenly jets of gases exploded from out of the rock. A second later, the hissing gases were replaced with crackling flames. Then, the entire rock was shattered by a terrible explosion from within. A roaring ball of flame consumed the remains of the meteor and rose upwards. It engulfed the Nin. At first they felt only the heat of the flames melting the skin off their body and devouring the tissue underneath. But then, they felt something much more sinister at work as a paradoxical darkness within the flames surrounded them and began to draw out their very life force. The Nin felt as if their souls were being stripped from them and being consumed by the terrible force. Then, it was over as the flames reduced their bodies to cinders, then nothing. As a roar filled the air and a massive explosion erupted upwards from the area of the impact. A great, smokeless ball of flame was climbing into the sky. At first, Orochimaru had expected it to dissipate harmlessly into the atmosphere. But, as he watched in awe, the flames began to move eerily in concert with one another. The ball seemed to contract in upon itself, the flames rolling inward like the petals of a blooming flower in reverse. Finally, the flames began to take shape and Orochimaru found that he could not stop shaking because of his sheer horror at what he was witnessing. Two great sheets of fire spread outward from either side of the larger mass. Then, three comparatively thin tendrils extended upwards and forwards between the two sheets. Two slightly thicker stumps extended downward from the center with two even thinner ones extending down and behind, barely visible from Orochimaru's angle. The flames began to fade. The sheets faded into vast sail-like wings spread outward from a body decked in diamond-shaped scales. The two stumps became four-toed feet, resembling an elephant's in shape somewhat. The thinnest tendrils became a pair of tails, ending in spiked clubs that whirled around behind the forming creature. And lastly, the three tendrils extending upward transformed into three serpentine necks, each capped with the head of what resembled a Chinese dragon, writhing about like a nest of snakes. Each of the three heads was crowned with horns. The creature's entire body, wings and all, was a brilliant golden color that reflected the light of the setting sun, making the monster seem to glow in the fading light. With a final dramatic flash of light, the monster was awakened and ready to wreak havoc. It descended on the helpless city, all three heads screeching madly. In a loud booming voice, the creature spoke in unison of its three heads, "Bow before me, humans. Bow before the might of the King of Terror, King Ghidorah." If there was one word that could be used to describe King Ghidorah, it was magnificent. Decked out in golden scales with vast wings and three dragon heads upon writhing serpentine necks made the kaiju an impressive sight. It was the very personification of the word monster. It was at once beautiful and frightening. Now, it sailed on those massive wings towards the helpless village of Otto. Orochimaru was still paralyzed with fear and awe to do anything. King Ghidorah descended on the city like a great demonic entity. As one, the three heads swung about and three maws opened wide to reveal slavering mouths lined with razor-sharp teeth and forked tongues. Energy crackled around inside those mouths and spewed forth in golden beams of energy that resembled bolts of lightning. But no lightning was ever like this. The bolts of power shattered everything in their paths, exploding with the fury of 100 paper bombs. Buildings were smashed and lit afire as the beams of energy swept over them. Each of the three heads moved independently, each sweeping its individual beam over a different section of the city in front of and below it. Sometimes one would fire across towards the other flank or upwards, seemingly into empty space. The creature went about its task with relentless efficiency and savagery, ripping apart the landscape below it. The villagers screamed in terror as the Otto Nin tried to defend themselves with fire ninjutsu, but were swept away by the explosions of the lightning bolts. But it wasn't even beginning to destroy. As King Ghidorah swept over the city, gusts of hurricane-force winds from its wings flattened those skyscrapers still standing and fanning the flames of the fires it had already set. The creature flew at a leisurely pace, firing its beams at will but keeping the majority of the force of its attack focused on the area directly in front of and below it as it flew overhead. King Ghidorah ripped a single, fiery swath straight down the center of the city. All it left behind was scorched earth, burning bodies and flaming rubble. It flew out past the city limits, all three heads shrieking and cackling madly, as if the thing took some sort of perverse glee at the destruction it wrought. With grace that bellied its tremendous size, King Ghidorah swung about for another pass. Only to be met by the sight of a massive white eight-headed snake reach out and pull it to the ground. Inside the mouth of one of the snakes was Orochimaru, his eyes no longer filled with fear or awe, but anger. "How dare you? How dare you do this to my village of test subjects? Each and every man, child, and woman hand-picked and kidnapped from nations, all reduced to ash, and with them, the ninjutsu of those nations. I don't care what you are, but I will see to it that you suffer." King Ghidorah rose up and stood tall and mighty as it stared at the large eight-headed serpent. "So, a human with the power of Daikuja. I smell the scent of Manda upon you. Very well, human, let us see if you can match the King of Terror in battle," yelled the mighty dragon as it roared, and the giant hydra roared back, both monsters preparing to do battle. Around them, the villagers knew that no matter who won, they would still suffer. The battle of the Daikaja was about to begin. Currently, all was quiet, nothing was stirring, not even a mouse. But what stirring wasn't a mouse? Matter of fact, it was hard to tell, but something was slithering through the frozen forest at a frantic pace out of the blizzard. It moved as if to escape the cold, and wherever it slithered, it left behind rot and decay. Suddenly it found a railroad, and with uncanny luck, a train coming by. If it had a mouth, it would have smiled at its great fortune. It quickly moved at the front of the train and braced itself as it splattered over the front of the train. The dark liquid then started to move into the smokestack of the train as it embraced the smog and grime inside. It slithered down into the engine as it fed on the grime and dirt. Sludge, it said as it sampled a bit more and slurped up something else. Filth, he. And then it moved to the furnace as it inhaled the smoke and other gases being burned. Fumes. It said as it started to moan as a jolt of lightning struck it as it touched something flashing. Ooh, that was rather nice. Delicious. Smog, smoke, sludge. Mother's milk. It said as it suddenly became aware of its surrounding. What is this? Machine. It's more dirty than the ones in the other world. And how did I get out of that world? It questioned before peering out engine into the train. Of course. Humans. What wonderful creatures, so clever, so helpful, it said as it chuckled to itself. If such a machine causes such delicious pollution, I must find more. No doubt there's even more delicious machinery in the human settlements, said Ghidorah, the reborn smog monster. But unlike his other form, a form composed of all matters of pollution into a massive sludge form, this new form of his looked human. A dark cloudy human made out of smog, smoke, and sludge into mockery of what could have been a beautiful man. Ooh. This pollution is just so fresh, and tainted. Ooh, muttered Ghidorah as he was quite literally growing aroused from the pollution. It was unlike that of the pollution back in the other earth. And once I am full strength, I'll enjoy turning this whole world into an inhabitable wasteland of sludge, oil, and noxious fumes. After all, if I'm going to live here, I might as well spruce up the place, said the smog monster as he sucked in more fumes and smoke. Elsewhere, something huge moved in the snow. From underneath the snow, a mountain of spikes rose. And then followed by an elephantine roar that echoed across the mountains. The creature was lost, confused. It had never been in here before, the freezing cold biting at its exposed flesh. But it sniffed the air, and caught a familiar scent, a friendly one. Lost and alone in this new world, the creature followed the scent of the only friend it had in the previous world. To a place covered in forests. To Konoha, Sound Village. Or what was left of it. Orochimaru was speechless. Despite the creature's size, it was incredibly fast, and its destructive force was on par or beyond the power of a Biju. Ghidorah wasn't even fighting him. It was content to tossing him about like leaves in a gale and slamming him into any impediments with terrific force. The monster seemed to be toying with them as a cat might play with a mouse before dealing the mortal blow. Orochimaru swore under his breath as one of his Hydra heads shot forth to grasp hold of the space dragon, only for it to be severed in half by one of Ghidorah's gravity beams that rained down on Orochimaru like bolts of lightning from heaven itself. Ghidorah came down on him spewing lightning bolt after lightning bolt. Ghidorah's energy bolts raked the ground where Orochimaru had been standing, blasting craters and trenches into the newly scorched earth. Orochimaru then gritted his teeth and took the pain as all 7 remaining heads shot forth to grasp the descending dragon. But at the last minute King Ghidorah flapped its wings and oriented itself into an upright position, like it was about to land, and 2 twin sinuous tails struck out slamming the snake Sanin away. With the snake Sanin still recovering from the blow, Ghidorah slammed its many tens of thousands of metric tons to slam into Yamata no Orochi, causing all 7 heads to cry out in pain. As it was about to take off, 2 of the heads reached out and lashed onto Ghidorah's wings and its left thigh. Ghidorah let out a roar of outrage as it tried to break free, but only dragged the giant Yamata no Orochi with it, its weight combined with Ghidorah's making it difficult to fly. Then the ground behind Ghidorah exploded as the 8th severed head of the Orochi flew out and bit into the center head's neck. The middle head let out a shriek of pain, with the other 2 making similar cries. Amazingly, the snake head was at an angle that made it next to impossible for the other heads to attack it. It bit deeper and deeper into the neck as the other heads attacked with renewed frenzy, each biting into different parts of the space Daikuja. Ghidorah thrashed about as it struggled to free itself, shooting gravity bolt after gravity bolt to try and escape. This wasn't supposed to happen, this was just a human with odd powers, there was no way it could end like this. Then the Yamata no Orochi lifted Ghidorah into the air with all 7 heads, not an easy task, but it was up to it. It began to slam Ghidorah into the ground again and again. Ghidorah had the advantage in the air, but the earth was where it was most cumbersome with its massive body, and Orochimaru had used that to his advantage. He smiled as all 7 heads released Ghidorah and then each head bit down into its wings, and tore out chunks of the wing membrane. Now Ghidorah has lost its one advantage. Orochimaru was so caught up in his attack, he failed to notice one Ghidorah head looking straight at him inside the mouth of one of the Orochi heads. He wasn't quick enough to shut the mouth, and the Ghidorah head fired a gravity ray into the mouth, which exploded followed by a sudden burst of blood and burnt snakeskin. Ghidorah took this moment to thrash about in the grip of the snake Sanin's monstrous form, smashing its tons of weight against the giant snake. Ghidorah was met with a blast of slashing wind blown from one of the mouths of the Orochi, slicing across its golden scales. "You damn monster, I like you. Your power will be mine," said the snake Sanin even as one of his arms fell out of its sockets. But with one hand, he started making hand signs. "Fuinjutsu. Fukoku Hoin," he said as from the mouths of the snakes came a vomit of darkness that started to creep along Ghidorah's body. The great space Daikuja struggled to free itself, firing blasts of lightning into the darkness, but to no avail. Eventually the darkness completely covered Ghidorah's body and then Ghidorah shouted out aloud, "I accept my fate, but your fate is sealed. The end of days is finally upon you and all who inhabit this miserable seedling." And with a mighty cry, that echoed across the area as if a cry to a higher power. And the darkness began to compress Ghidorah's body. Smaller and smaller, the shrieks of pain and agony ringing in the air as finally the darkness hardened into a black glass ball, no bigger than a marble. "Oh, what horrors await you," he said before finally being sealed. Orochimaru smirked to himself as his Orochi form disappeared in a poof of smoke, and he returned to his original form, minus an arm. He smiled as he picked up the orb and gloated, "How the mighty have fallen." The great king of terror reduced to awe. He suddenly cried as a jolt of electricity shocked him and he dropped the orb. "So, still defiant to the end are we? Well, a few experiments, and you'll be serving me soon enough," said Orochimaru as he marveled at what he could learn from this beast. He then looked around. A few of the survivors of the village had started to crawl out of the ruins. "Well, what are you peons staring at? Clean this mess up," he yelled. Konoha. After a little incident, Hinata came back to the Hyuga manor ready to face her father. She was tired of running, and decided to give Takuya's advice a shot. "Father, I'm home," she said as she came into his room, her father facing out a window sitting on a floor cushion. His face was cold and grim. Hinata sat on a cushion nearby and awaited her father to say something. After a minute of uncomfortable silence, he said, "Hinata, I don't even know if I'm angry or concerned. Tell me, how did you manage to produce silk from the palm of your hand?" he asked without facing her. Hinata fumbled with her fingers as she said, I don't know." Hiyashi was silent again before he said, "Have you been practicing kenjutsu behind my back? Is this silk a byproduct of it?" he asked, turned at her and stared, his Byakugan on the verge of activating. Hinata gave him a look of shock. "Kenjutsu? Father, I would never." "Then how do you explain this? No one in the history of the Hyuga has been able to do this." The only answer could kenjutsu in an attempt to take back the position as heir. Smack. Hiyashi recoiled as he felt a stinging pain across his cheek, and then it came to him. His own daughter slapped him. "How dare you? How dare you accuse me of using kenjutsu? Who the hell do you think I am?" She screamed at the top of her lungs as tears fell from her eyes. Hinata was shaking from both anger and the fact that she just struck her own father. "You should know me better than anyone, I'm your daughter. You think I would resort to kenjutsu to try and become heir? If I wanted to regain my status as heir, I'd regain with blood, sweat and tears, not from kenjutsu." She screamed again as she stumbled backwards, breathing heavily. Hiyashi was in shock. Where was the shy soft-spoken little girl that had always been silent and obedient? Where in the world did she get this confidence? He wondered as his daughter reverted back to the silent daughter he was used to. He rubbed his face as he stood over Hinata, who practically shrank under his gaze. He then moved slowly towards her, and Hinata feared he was gonna strike her now. She closed her eyes and awaited the blow, but instead of stinging pain, she felt warmth and comfort. Hiyashi had instead hugged her and held her tightly, and his body shook as if he was crying. "My dear daughter, you know that I love you," said as tears cascaded down his cheeks, "but even I couldn't prevent what the elders wanted," he said as he clutched his fists in anger. "The elders want to kick you out from the clan. They fear that whatever this is will ruin the bloodline of Hyuga. I swear I tried to change their minds. But I could do nothing. I failed my wife. And now I failed my daughter," said Hiyashi as Hinata was in a state of shock. She was expelled from the clan? Was this really happening to her? What happened afterwards was all a blur to her. The next thing she knew, she was outside the Hyuga manor with a backpack of her clothing and personal belongings. So this is how it ends, she muttered to herself as she walked along a side road leading to Kurenai-sensei's house. "But your journey is just beginning," said a pair of voices. Hinata looked around for the source of the voices, but there was no one around here. "Down here," again came the voices. Hinata turned around to find herself staring at a tree. At the base of the tree was the most beautiful flower she had ever seen. "Come closer," they said again, as Hinata cautiously moved closer to the flower. And then, to her immense surprise, two tiny women, one in a red priestess clothing, the other in blue, emerged from behind the flower. The two girls looked identical to each other. They both had their long black hair pulled up into ponytails with medium-length bangs. They both wore little dresses that ended just under their knees with a single shoulder strap which went over the opposite shoulder from their twin. They looked exactly the same and, in fact, the only difference that she could see between the two was that the one on the right was wearing a sky blue dress and the one on the left was wearing a deep orange dress. Hinata stared in awe for a moment at them as they bowed to her. "Greetings, young Hyuga, we meet again," they said in union, and, to their surprise, Hinata fainted. "Oh my, was it something we said?" asked Laura. "I think seeing this was a little much for her. Let's try and wake her up," said Maul as they both climbed atop her to her face. "Fairy, fairy, where are you?" cried Maul as a small squeak was her response. A moth about the size of a small bird flew overhead, then floated close to the twins. "Ah, good. Can you wake her up?" asked Laura and Maul in union. The tiny moth squeaked in reply, and flapped its wings as a glittery powder drifted down on Hinata. Slowly, she awoke, and nearly jumped when she saw the tiny priestess on her chest. "Calm down, we're not gonna hurt you," cried Maul as she clung for her dear life on Hinata's jacket, Laura doing the same. Hinata was panting as she tried to calm herself down, and the fact that a moth the size of a bird was fluttering in front of her wasn't helping. "Are you? Or why you real?" she asked. Laura hopped onto Hinata's right shoulder and pinched her cheek. Hinata squealed in response. "That real enough?" asked Laura. Hinata nodded as Maul smacked her sister's head. "No need to hurt her to prove a point, Laura." Laura glared at her sister as she rubbed her head. "Yeah, I guess I went too far," she said. Both sisters leapt off Hinata onto Fairy, who chittered as if fluttered about Hinata. What are you?" asked Hinata. Both of the twins smiled and said in union, "We are the Shobaijin, the priestess of Mothra." Hinata could only stare for a moment in silence, and then she asked, "Who?" "Mothra, the great guardian of the universe," said Laura. "Along with the other guardians," said Maul. Before Hinata could even ask, there was a loud rumbling sound as several trees nearby were falling to the ground. What emerged from the trees was a gigantic praying mantis. What shocked her more was the fact that Takuya was currently on its head, pounding the living daylights out of it. "Flee!" cried the twins as their mount flew high into the sky as Hinata leapt away as the praying mantis thrashed about, until finally it collapsed to the ground. Takuya leapt off its head with a satisfied grin. Well, that was a nice warm-up. It was then Takuya found Hinata staring at him. "Ah crap, not now," he muttered as he covered his head with his palm. "I believe it's time to come clean, Takuya," said the Shobaijin as they hovered nearby. Takuya gave them a glare that could possibly kill. Well, The great Shobaijin finally show themselves after all these years. How have you been? I've been fine, other than the fact you stripped my soul from my body and left me to live out 12 miserable years. As a human. Now, I believe explanations are in order. Said Takuya as he circled around the twins. It would seem that the humans have developed a new weapon of some sort that even you could not overcome. Came the twins' reply. Your unchallenged gasp of the obvious never ceases to amaze me, girls. I had already gathered that much, you bleeding imbeciles. Takuya roared back, anger saturating his tone. Get to the point, as we were about to say. The Shobaijin replied forcefully. It would seem to be a man-made black hole fired at you from a satellite in orbit around the planet. Based on what we gathered from reading the human leader's thoughts, they call it dimension tide. It's quite an impressive feat for humans, if we do say so ourselves. It appears that you were caught within a wormhole, thrown into the fabric of space and time, trapping you here for the rest of your life. Damn those insignificant, worthless apes. The monster roared out in anger. Every time I knock them down, they somehow get right back up. Oh well, just one more of their toys for me to destroy once you two get me out of this prison. We're sorry, Godzilla, but we can't. They said as a loud crack was heard as Takuya had smashed his fist into a nearby tree. Excuse me? The beast growled at the tiny twins, malice absolutely dripping from his every word. Would you mind repeating that one more time? I'm afraid because when the Shinigami claimed your body, he learned of our world and the horrors you and the other kaiju committed. Did you truly believe that we would simply set you free after you caused such damage to the earth? The Shobaijin said coolly as they crossed their arms before their chests. Damage to the earth? That's nothing what this apes did to my father. They attacked him as he was dying from his illness. They reanimated my grandfather's corpse into some machine and forced him to fight me. And worst of all, after I saved them from the Zillions during the final war, they nearly killed my offspring. I had the right to exact my revenge, yelled Takuya. What the humans did was wrong in trying to eliminate any potential threat your son may cause for them in the future. We understand that, the Shobaijin said calmly, but you have gone too far this time. We can no longer ignore what you have done. Too far? The Monster King roared again. An attack upon my heir is an attack upon myself. I will never tolerate such violence towards the young one. He nearly died from his wounds. I would never allow the pain they caused him to go unpunished. Enough, the Shobaijin bellowed. The Monster King silenced himself immediately after the twins' outburst. We have had absolutely enough of you. The Shobaijin said as they each pointed an accusing finger at the beast before them. We have tolerated you for long enough. Even the Shinigami agrees with us. The eyes of Takuya dilated in utter rage towards the two girls. The gray-skinned child snarled in deeply before unleashing the mightiest roar he could muster, sending a gust of superheated air blasting across the two twin fairies and their moth. The Shobaijin and their companion fairy defiantly remained perfectly in place. Hinata stumbled back at this. Currently, the Shobaijin said, you contain the souls of over 900 million people. The accumulated souls of every human to die in World War II, along with the souls of every human ever killed by a kaiju in the last 50 years. And for every soul that you take into yourself and prevent from moving on to the afterlife, you absorb the power of their life force and grow stronger, exponentially. A.N. The gray-skinned child merely growled at the twins. Your punishment, as decreed by the Shinigami himself, the Shobaijin continued, shall be to live for one human lifespan as a human for every single soul that you have absorbed until you have no more souls left to feed upon and you lose all of your power. You will live forever this way, to fight in every single human conflict and war that has ever happened on the face of the earth, whether you like it or not. This is your ultimate punishment. Damn it, he cried as he slammed the tree into the ground. He started screaming in rage as his eyes started to glow orange as he started smashing his fists into nearby trees, then throwing them quite a distances away. Hinata-san, we can't allow Takuya to go on a rampage, you're gonna have to help us calm him. Cried Laura as Fairy barely dodged a tree thrown their way. Hinata looked at them in confusion. Me? What can I do? She cried as she also dodged a tree thrown her way. Use the silk, it'll stop him. Cried Maul as Fairy chirped in agreement. Hinata wondered for a moment exactly how did they know that, but decided to question it later. Takuya had to be stopped, he'd probably hurt himself or someone in his rage. Aiming her palm at Takuya, Instantly silk began to shoot from her palm, coating across Takuya's skin like glue. Takuya didn't take too kindly to this. He roared at her as he kicked his foot into the ground, sending large chunks of earth at her. She screamed as she barely dodged out the way, Takuya trying to get rid of the sticky substance. "Don't give up, Hinata-sama. Use your breast cannon," yelled Laura. "Be breast cannon," cried Hinata as she blushed just at the name of what they were saying. "Just put your hands over your chest in a heart shape, be sure to shout the name out, and aim at Takuya," cried the twins. Hinata blushed as she placed her hands in a heart shape over her heart. Be breast cannon," she cried. Instantly she felt a surge of energy as a ball of energy formed between her hands, and a beam of gray lightning was fired. The breast cannon slammed into Takuya, causing him to roar in pain. Hinata gasped in surprise and instinctively fired more of her silk on the fallen Takuya. Takuya roared in anger as the silk began to build up on him, until he was literally cocooned in a large mass of silk. No matter how much he struggled, he couldn't break free. Eventually, he calmed down to the point where his glowing orange eyes disappeared, and then he took an inhale of air, and started to laugh. The expression on his face was initially one of utter shock, but then slowly, like a crack opening in the earth's crust, a sick, twisted smile cracked its way across the boy's face before he burst out into insane laughter. Takuya roared with laughter so disturbed and so malicious that even the Shobaijin were troubled by its tone. By the time the child had stayed his laughter, the twins and Hinata had inched themselves back from the insanely laughing child by several feet. "Oh, this is just perfect, oh so perfect. I was made from the fires of war. War, battle, conflict, combat, fighting, they are my specialty, they are the things I never fail at. I'll accept this punishment, and when the day comes when I die, I'll show those bastards in the realm of the dead what hell is really like," he said as he motioned for Hinata to come closer. "Get this damn crap off me," he ordered. Hinata took a glance at the Shobaijin, who nodded in agreement. Takuya sighed as Hinata began to peel away the silk cocoon. "You actually managed to pull off the breast cannon? There's hope for you yet," said Takuya with a wicked smile as Hinata blushed. Using that attack was a little embarrassing. After the silk was off, Takuya inspected himself. Good, not a single strand left. "Alrighty then, I best be off making the best of this. I've got a little field test to attend to. If you want to come and watch, be my guest," said Takuya as he shot a glare at the twins. "Don't think I'm gonna let you two off the hook. I swear I will get back at you two one way or another," he warned as the twins said nothing. He then walked off towards the training grounds his sensei told him the day before. Hinata was hesitant to follow, but she took a deep breath and followed. Elsewhere on a cliff a trio of figures were watching them. "So the Monster King finally shows himself," said a boy with a sort of hair that resembled the hood of a cobra. His eyes were slitted and he had a pair of long fangs sticking out from his lips. "Indeed, Axer. Perhaps now we can extract our revenge on him. And claim his title for our own," said another boy, this one with long spiky hair, a pair of bangs drooping off the side of his head like frills. "What about the girl? She appears to contain the soul of Mothra," said a female who had large, squid tentacles moving behind her back. "She's no threat to us, Ghidorah, focus on Godzilla," said Axer. "Zedis, you move the fastest, go on ahead," said Axer. Zedis nodded and with one leap, covered at least a mile, and disappeared into the forest. Elsewhere, in the confines of space and time, the children of the eight-headed serpent were lying asleep. But in their sleep they felt the so-called King of Terror be sealed away by a man who bore the name of their father, Orochi. Yamata no Orochi was perhaps the first Daikaja in recorded history to menace humanity. The legend of the beast spread throughout the world, one version being the Hydra of Greek mythos, and his size and raw elemental power a force to be reckoned with. Orochi eventually met his end at the hands of Susanoo, as the legend of the Kojiki goes, when the beast drank of 8 vats of sake, purified 8 times over. The Kojiki states that Orochi then fell asleep, and Susanoo cut him apart, but the legend of the Yamato Guardians proclaims that Orochi was merely weakened by the sake, and Susanoo used the power of his sister, Amaterasu, to become Utsu no Ikusagami. Though others state that Yamato Takeru did this. It varies, and destroyed the serpent. Regardless, nobody knows where Orochi came from, though it was not necessarily an evil creature, rather a pure force of nature, which lashed out at mankind, not unlike Godzilla. Some have speculated that Orochi was born from some leftover part of Ghidorah 65 million years ago. Regardless of Orochi's origin, the creature's most important contribution to the history of kaiju is what happened after its demise. When Ikusagami, Yamato, Susanoo defeated the monster, each of its 8 heads were severed. Each head, however, carried a certain power or element, they being fire, earth, water, wind, thunder, venom, light and shadow. Each head, which each power, slithered off into the far reaches of the world, and, as the Guardian legend goes, each returned as its own Daikuja. Baragon, Daikuja of earth. Manda, Daikuja of water. Shigen, Daikuja of lightning. Varan, Daikuja of wind. Barugaran, Daikuja of fire. Bagnosaurus, Daikuja of venom. Jaiarumu, Daikuja of shadow. Balkzardan, Daikuja of light. Each as powerful and chaotic as their father, with the exception of Baragon and Varan, who transcended from being spawns of Orochi to become Yamato guardians, to join the ranks of Gamera, Mothra, and others. With the use of Dimension Tide, the monsters were forever sealed in the space between time. But Ghidorah left the way open. As he told Orochimaru, oh what horrors await him, and the unsuspecting world of shinobi. It rumbled past the trees as it continued on its trek to Konoha. Birds flew to avoid the giant creature's advance as the earth shook with its weight. Careful as much as a gargantuan creature such as itself could be, it managed to avoid any human settlements. It had seen what these humans were capable of, and it wasn't in the mood for a fight anyways. It could smell him, his friend was close by. But there were others. Hostile Daikuja, some familiar, some unknown. It picked up its speed as it rushed forth to its ally. It seemed a simple task of them working together. Instead it was Takuya trying to kill Sasuke with a chunk of earth after the Uchiha child made a mocking taunt at Takuya's gray skin. That sent the boy flying into rage and he spent the first half of the test trying to kill Sasuke. All within the first 5 minutes of starting the whole damn thing. This went downhill fast. Thought Kakashi as Naruto had Takuya in a leghold and the boy was cussing like a bomb while Sakura attended to Sasuke. I swear if you even so much as look at me funny again Uchiha, I'll, yelled Takuya as Naruto stuffed a rock in his mouth. Calm down man, he said as the struggling gray-haired boy stopped squirming but kept the nasty glare in his eye. Suddenly an idea overcame Naruto, and he whispered in Takuya's ear as Kakashi turned around to look back at his perverted novel. Oi, Takuya, instead of fighting Sasuke, focus your rage on Kakashi-sensei. If you can distract him long enough, I might be able to get the bells for us. You honestly think a Jonin is gonna fall for this? Asked Takuya as he stopped biting Naruto's leg. Worth a shot, said Naruto with a foxy grin. If we fail, I'm gonna kick your ass, said Takuya as Naruto let go. Standing upright again, Takuya grunted in effort as he jabbed his fingers into the earth and pulled free a large slab of rock. Kakashi barely had time to dodge when he heard the feral cry and saw Takuya carrying a slab of rock like a sledgehammer and a smile that would fit right in with a slasher movie. Die, he yelled as the rock came down with thunderous slam. Whoa whoa whoa, that was overkill Takuya, yelled Naruto as he half expected to find Kakashi buried under the tree. But instead of blood and guts, it was a log. I freaking hate that trick, muttered Takuya as Kakashi reappeared a few feet away. You're fast Hitaki, but can you dodge this? Yelled Takuya as a light started to appear in his mouth. Kakashi glared as the very air shimmered and spiraled into Takuya's mouth as a glow came off his spine. A humming noise could be heard as energy crackled in his mouth like lightning, and what came out was a ring of smoke. Kakashi gave Takuya a deadpan look as the smoke ring harmlessly broke apart upon touching him. What was that? He asked as Takuya has a dumb folded look on his face. He repeated this and kept shooting smoke rings in an attempt to correct this problem. Must be the weather or something. That wasn't supposed to happen. You're dead now, he yelled as he kept blowing smoke rings at Kakashi. Can you stop? Your little rings are starting to irritate my eye. Honestly, you need to work on your Kaden. Fire style, said Kakashi as he reached to rub his visible eye. At that moment Naruto came up from underground and reached out to grab the bells on Kakashi's belt, but was a split second delayed as Kakashi jumped away. Clever, distracting me with Takuya's little blunder and to blind me from seeing him coming out underneath. Close but no cigar, thought Kakashi as Naruto cursed under his breath. Suddenly from the smoke a small ball of light shot forth and Kakashi ducked as the trees behind him exploded into fire. Well, looks like the dog's bite is as bad as his bark. Damn, I missed, said Takuya as he cracked his knuckles. Well, there's no choice now but to just, started Naruto. Attack, attack, and attack, yelled Takuya as he gave a feral cry and charged forward. Kage Bushin no Jutsu, yelled Naruto as he made the sign and suddenly 5 more Narutos appeared. The 6 Narutos leapt at Kakashi as Takuya ran around, uplifted a tree and was preparing to bring it down on Kakashi. This is payback for what you did earlier to my ass, yelled the Narutos. You realize all you have to do is grab the bells, said Kakashi. Screw the bells, all we want is one good hit. And we'll call it a day, yelled Takuya as he was about to bring the tree down on Kakashi until someone jumped from the bushes and tumbled with Takuya across the ground. It was a boy, a green-skinned boy with some kind of frill around his neck, as well as a series of spines going down his back. His predatory smile gleamed in the sunlight as Takuya's facial expression deepened into anger. You! He yelled as he suddenly roared and bit into the other kid's neck. Both combatants roared in primal rage as they began to claw, punch, or kick at each other, causing blood to start splashing over the ground. Eventually they worked themselves up from the ground and started slugging each other in the face before the frill-necked boy sliced open one of Takuya's arms. Holy shit, cried Naruto at the bloody spectacle as Sasuke and Sakura also were stricken back at the brutal grappling the two boys were engaging in. Quickly Kakashi tried to intervene but the frilled kid suddenly turned towards him. And his tongue shot forth and nearly pierced Kakashi, instead impaling and shattering a tree. Zedus, you better have a damn good reason for showing your face around my territory, yelled Takuya as the boy now named Zedus retracted his tongue with a disgusting slurp. For the very same reason as before Goji-kun. We want to claim the title of king for ourselves. Slurp asterisk, said Zedus as he wiped a trail of drool coming out of his mouth. Oh crap, yelled Takuya as the ground beneath Sasuke and Sakura shook and massive squid tentacles reached out to grasp them. Ghidorah, roared Takuya as the pale-skinned woman in ripped clothing emerged from the ground, 4 massive squid tentacles extending from her back. Suddenly, Kakashi slumped forward and his body became limp. Kakashi-sensei, yelled Sakura as she stared in horror. On the back of Kakashi was some sort of small humanoid cobra coming out of some sort of camouflage ability. And its fangs were sinking into his shoulder. That's one down, said the cobra child as its small legs coiled and jumped onto one of the nearby log posts. Axer, how did, started Takuya as he was suddenly struck from behind by Zedus. We get past your sense of smell? We're humans now, Goji. We don't have the same scent as before. We smell the same as these pathetic humans before you. But of course, unlike you, started Axer as his body began to shift. Likewise Zedus and Ghidorah's appearances began to distort. From Zedus' human body, his legs grew more muscular as his features became more reptilian. A tail tore its way out of his pants as his arms shrank and fingers melded together to form 3 claws. The frill grew larger as Zedus released a roar, now fully in his true kaiju form. Ghidorah's body exploded into a mass of tentacles as something resembling a cuttlefish erupted from the young woman's backside. It made a chittering noise as large bulbous eyes peered at them as the temperature around them suddenly dropped. As for Axer, his body stretched and grew until his body became sleek and black. A large cobra head overshadowed the group. A forked tongue hung from the mouth of Axer as a black jewel eye appeared upon his forehead. As we were able to keep our true forms. You're outmatched, Kane. You can't hope to fight all 3 of you SSSS. Roared Axer as Zedus and Ghidorah were quick to surround the 4 genin. Each were at least 15 feet in height, perhaps taller, but that was anyone's guess. I'm gonna be sore in the morning, that's for damn sure, muttered Takuya as he barked at the 3 other genin. Scatter. Go get help, as Ghidorah brought down a tentacle to crush them. All of them save Takuya jumped out of the way as Takuya stood his ground and braced himself for the blow. The ground shattered with the blow. Rock and debris kicked up as Ghidorah's tentacle was suddenly lifted and then revealed that Takuya held a firm grip as he started to tug on it. With a mighty yell, Ghidorah was suddenly lifted off the ground as she was slammed into Zetus. "Even in this form, I can still scrape with the best of them," yelled Takuya as he ran into a forest. Axer roared as it charged forward and tried to stomp Takuya into the ground. The small boy jumped out of the way and reached into the earth and tore another chunk out. He threw it into the face of the Cobra Kaiju as he ran off into the forest. "Leave him to me. Kill the other Bratchase, we can't allow our presenses to be known, not yet," hissed Axer. "But, wouldn't they have already seen us? I mean, we are kinda big slurp," said Zetus before Axer ripped a tree out of the ground and smacked Zetus across the face. "You idiot, we're not even full SSS size. Not to mention, we have none of that chakra, or whatever the humans have been going on about. SSSSO, they won't SSC us, they won't essence us, SSSO no problem. Unless those Bratchase get to the village first. Now do SISSAY, hissed Axer as Zetus and Ghidorah nodded and left to locate the other three. Axer hissed to himself as he charged into the direction Takuya ran in. With the trio, "Did you see the size of those things?" yelled Naruto as he wiped the sweat from his brow. "What kinda training did they undergo to be able to use henge like that?" asked Sasuke. "There's no style of training that can do that, I know that for a fact. I read the entire textbook back at the academy and I have never seen or read about something like this," said Sakura as she peeked from behind the tree she was hiding behind. "No sign of any of them. What did that snake bastard do to Kakashi-sensei?" "All he did was bite him," asked Naruto. "You idiot. Snakes have natural venom glands that can either poison a victim to death or paralyze them so they can eat them at their leisure. And from the look of it, Kakashi was caught off guard, even I didn't see him," said Sasuke as he flinched at the sound of a twig snapping. "Shish, they're here," said Sakura as the large lizard creature and the squid creature were tearing apart trees. "I hate the humans here. It was so much easier to kill them back home. Did they leap through trees like monkeys? No. Did they have the ability to use all these crazy powers to actually take on a Daikaja and win? No. All they had were those metal beetles and hornets and those stingers they shot at us," said Zetus as he peered around a tree then kicked it over. "Stop your complaining," said Ghidorah as she inhaled air, then released it as a large amount of mist. "You're trying to smoke them out?" asked Zetus. "What does it look like, frill neck? Honestly, you reptilian Daikaja," muttered Ghidorah as more mist exhaled from her body. "How does it expect to smoke us out with mist?" asked Naruto as the mist drifted their way. "Hey, is it me? Or is it getting colder?" asked Sakura as she flinched when she saw her breath. Then they saw it, frost was beginning to form over the trees. "Damn it," yelled Zetus as he clawed at his foot to remove the frost forming. "Get behind me, you idiot," said Ghidorah as it continued to breath out more mist. "It's getting colder," muttered Naruto as his body began to shiver uncontrollably. "Damn it, she's using some sort of ice ninjutsu," said Sasuke, despite his normally stoic nature, was now shivering in the cold. Come out, little children. We promise not to kill you. Quickly slurp asterisk," said Zetus as he tore a tree up, a few feet away from where the trio were hiding. Elsewhere, Axer and Takuya were in the midst of a fighting, Takuya using his smaller size to his advantage, able to duck and weave out of the much larger Axer. But Axer had one advantage that Takuya lacked, the power of his mind. "Serpent mind scream," roared Axer. The monstrous cobra discovered what he wished within Takuya's network of nerves and ganglia. Genetic codes, messages and limitations hidden within the atomic child's DNA lie before Axer's gaze like an open book. From Axer's form there came a cry which assaulted the very core of Takuya's nervous system like a high-pitched sound wave. The child gave but a single shriek of pain as he toppled upon the grounds, stunned by the mental and physical assault. Takuya gritted his teeth and stood up, hands bared like claws as he charged at Axer. Axer easily recognized Takuya's intent and his arms began to gyrate in maddening patterns and colors, the mechanics of an act of psychokinetic power, the solving of a riddle of the physical universe that mankind would call wizardry in his terror. The ground at Takuya's feet began to ooze between the boy's toes. A few steps more and it ceased to support Takuya's mass. Like an elephant in quicksand, Takuya began to sink into the solid rock whose cohesion Axer's magic had destroyed. Your feeble fist Sakal S's strength is no match for my SS superior intellect. Through it I can momentarily warp reality to a curtained degree. Relinquish your title as king, and I may let you live," said Axer as his hand wrapped around Takuya's neck and began to squeeze. "I'd sooner cut my own heart out and given you miserable backstabbing snake," yelled Takuya as he breathed in deep and fired a blue ball of energy into Axer's face. The massive serpent hissed in pain as he stumbled backwards. Takuya used the moment to gather his strength and break free, showering the area with rocks as he leapt forward, and slammed his body into the midsection of the cobra monster. Both fell to the ground, Takuya biting and punching into Axer as he began to crawl around him to stay out of his reach. "Damn it, why now? Why attack me now? Why here?" yelled Takuya as he was at the head of Axer, pummeling him across the eye with his fist. "It's because of what you haven't done. It's because of you abandoning USSS. You're not worthy of the title of king," yelled Axer almost hysterically as he grabbed the small child in his hands. "You left us to die back in the other dimension. Where were you when the humans began the genocide? Only you could have SS's stop them. I will defeat you. Become king. Lead our people to victory at last," started Axer as what looked like tears began to flow from his eyes. "Hold on, genocide, Axer. What the hell is going on in the other world?" asked Takuya as Axer relaxed his grasp. "You'll find out eventually, but for now I'll enjoy seeing the sight of you at the bottom of my foot, as I and my comrades rule over this world and the other. All will bow before Axer, the Cobra King," said Axer with a snarl as he brought a claw down on the gray-skinned boy, only for him to disappear in a cloud of smoke. "What?" he cried. The next thing Axer knew, he was lying on the ground with the orange-eyed teen glaring at him in the most unearthly way. "What makes you think I'd let you do that, when I've already laid claim to this territory?" growled Takuya as he held the giant cobra by the throat, an inhuman glow of orange entering his eyes as his spine lit up a neon blue color. Axer began to laugh. "If you don't submit, I'll have my comrades kill your little friend's SS submit and I may let them live to be my pets. The little female might make a nice concubine," said the cobra monster with a hiss that made Takuya sick with disgust. "They can handle themselves, not like the humans in the other world. Get out of my sight. And if I ever find you slithering around here again, and if you even think of harming one hair on them, I'll burn you down to your atoms," Takuya said as the light from his back shifted to his right fist, which took on the neon blue glow. "That's not like you, the great monster king defending the humans? Since when does a lowly peon ever question the intentions of his king?" came a voice from behind Axer. Axer froze as a shadow came over him. It was impossible, but Axer turned around to find himself staring at the gargantuan face of a large saurian creature. Its body encased in a shell of bony spikes as a crown of horns lined its head. But its eyes, so full and innocent, yet filled with such ferocity and rage. Takuya's face suddenly exploded into a toothy grin. "About time you showed up, you old bastard. You tried trekking across this land using scent alone, ya gray-haired punk," said the creature as it stared down at Axer. Unlike Axer, who had not managed to return to his full height, this creature was the very least 60 feet tall, and that was just it on all fours. "Angorius," he muttered, "the right hand of the king." The Daikaja known as Angorius let loose an echoing roar that shook the land and sent birds and animals fleeing for their lives. Zedus and Ghidorah suddenly stopped their advance on the genin as they looked up and heard the cry. "Now's our chance. Scatter!" yelled Sasuke as he threw a smoke bomb. Zedus and Ghidorah suddenly snapped back their attention to the forest as literally dozens of the genin were running about. "How do they? Quit your stuttering and kill them," yelled Jeroza as she slammed a tentacle down on one of the Narutos, who disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Zedus growled as he chased after the Sakura group, stomping on one, only for it to disappear. "Clones, I hate that little move these humans use," yelled Zedus as his tongue shot out at one of the Sakuras, who also disappeared in a cloud of smoke. "Hey, over here," yelled a Naruto clone as he threw a kunai into one of Jeroza's tentacles. Instantly, Ghidorah lashed out with a cloud of freezing mist, only for the Naruto clone to disappear. Wrong target, dumbass, yelled Naruto as suddenly Ghidorah felt a kick into one of her eyes. Don't ever underestimate me. You take your eyes off me for a second and you'll regret it. Shut up, insect, yelled Ghidorah as she wrapped her tentacle around Naruto, only for him to disappear in a cloud of smoke. What? Didn't I tell you? Don't take your eyes off me. Naruto shouted as he came from behind and jabbed a kunai into the squishy hide of Ghidorah. Kage Bushin no Jutsu, yelled Naruto as literally dozens of more clones appeared. Dogpile on the squid, cried Naruto as the entire mini-army started to swarm around Ghidorah, slashing with kunai or kicking her at the more fleshy parts of her skin. Stop it right now, yelled Ghidorah as lances of ice erupted from her skin, impaling all the Narutos who disappeared in clouds of smoke. Let's see. The real one is right here, yelled Naruto as a tentacle came down on him. The ground shook as Ghidorah let out a chitter of delight. Got him that time, said Ghidorah smugly. She then heard a battle cry and turned her attention to a Naruto in the sky, and fired an ice lance at him, only for him to disappear. What? Shouted Ghidorah. I warned ya, didn't I? Yelled the real Naruto, who was just below her sight. He jumped up, kunai in hand, and this time plunged it deep into one of Ghidorah's eyeballs. The giant squid creature let out a shriek of pain as Naruto smiled. You just about ready, Sasuke? Cried Naruto. Just about dope, said Sasuke as Ghidorah looked behind her to find the raven-haired boy making the final hand signs for a ninjutsu. Kaden. Gokakyu no Jutsu, shouted Sasuke as an enormous blast of fire engulfed Ghidorah. The enormous squid squealed in horror as the fire ate at her flesh. She flailed and screamed as she made way for the nearby river to douse the flames. After making it, Ghidorah retreated along the river. This was not worth the title of king, being beaten by a couple of human younglings. Zedis roared in frustration as the many gaggles of Sakura continued to run around at his feet. Confounded little, stand still, he cried as he crushed one, and he growled in frustration as she disappeared in smoke. You can't hide forever, little girl. I'll find you, cried Zedis as his tongue shot out and impaled another Sakura only for her to disappear. Great. How am I supposed to get away from this guy? She thought to herself as Zedis shot forth his tongue again, and impaled it into another clone. Sakura grinned as a thought came to her, and she disappeared into the trees. While she wasn't good at it, it was her only shot against this thing. Hey, over here, you big ugly lizard, she cried out as Zedis turned towards her. The pack of Sakuras disappearing as only one walked into the clearing. Oh, so you decided to make this easy for me, said Zedis before he noticed something. The little pink-haired girl was bigger than before. Matter of fact, she was growing bigger. Eventually Zedis found himself staring up at a pink-haired giantess with a sadistic grin on her face. How's it feel to be the tiny one? She cried out as her large hands wrapped around Zedis, squeezing the life out of him. Ha ha, you're so small, is funny to me. Please, let me cough go. Keep crying, baby. Meanwhile, Sakura sighed in relief as the large creature was on the ground twitching as if caught in a steel trap. Man, I didn't even think a creature that big could fall for a simple genjutsu like that, she said to herself as Zedis suddenly let out a cry of pain. I better get before it wears off, she muttered as she leapt off to find her teammates. Axer swore under his breath as Takuya slammed his fist across his face, sending the cobra creature skidding across the ground. Not so tough without your mental powers, are ya? Cried out Takuya as he grabbed hold of Axer's tail and grunted as he lifted Axer up and started slamming him into the ground repeatedly. God damn it, thought Axer to himself as Takuya started to dust off his hands, and engaging in a small conversation with Angurius. How? I knew that he was sealed in that form, but I never knew he would be this strong in that form. I miscalculated, thought Axer as he started backing away. And where do you think you're going? Cried out Takuya as he jumped in front of Axer and grabbed him by the throat. I don't understand, you hate humans. Why defend them? Why now? After all they've done, what they did to our kind? Cried out Axer. Unlike in the other world, these humans are capable of battling with us and possibly even winning against us. I'm not so stupid as to antagonize them like what you're doing. Besides, even if I do hate humans, I don't have much of a choice in the matter, now. If I ever catch you around here again, I will turn you into so much purple paste. Genshi Shugeki. Atomic impact, cried Takuya as he spread his palm out towards Axer's head, and a pulse of blue light erupted from his palm with a large humming noise. Axer could not describe the pain, his entire body went numb from the force of the blow. Then he realized it, the impact of the shockwave of an atomic bomb. That's what it felt like. The air itself seemed to shatter in the wake of the attack as Axer was suddenly thrown into the air and he flew and flew across the sky, until he was nothing but a dot in the air. Takuya and Angerus stood side by side, staring as the distant twinkle in the sky signaled Axer's departure. Well, glad that's over. Still, how am I gonna explain to them about this? Asked Takuya as he rubbed his hair. It would have been found out sooner, said a voice as Takuya and Angerus turned to find Kakashi sitting against a tree. So you heard all that? Asked Takuya. Not that I understood any of it, said Kakashi as he looked up at the giant creature before him. Is he some kinda summoning animal? Asked Kakashi. If you're referring to one of the creatures that live in clans and sign contracts with humans to provide aid to them, no, he is not, said Takuya as Angerus turned his massive body around to face Kakashi, who inhaled the air around Kakashi. He smells of those furry little things back home, said Angerus. Dog, he probably has a contract with them, said Takuya as he started walking to Kakashi. So Mr. Hitaki, now you know the truth. I am, as you probably suspected, not entirely human. But the real question is, what will you do about it? He asked as he waved his arms about in a particular fashion. I heavily suspected it based on your physical appearance alone. I've seen my share of unique humans in my lifetime. But you were different. As for what I'll do about it, well, I can't really do anything. You're just a child and I really don't like wasting my time with children. Children with the strength of 50 men and capable of shooting fireballs? Asked Takuya. You'd be surprised how common that is around here. True. Anyways, if you're still interested, speak with your Hokage. I already explained the situation to him a long time ago. Oh, and another thing. How do you manage to ward off Axer's venom? A simple substitution technique. It's surprisingly easy to fool a creature that big, said Kakashi. Oh yes, the little illusions you humans weave here and there. Oh, and I'm pretty sure your students are just about done with Zetas and Ghidorah. Might want to check in on them, said Takuya as he waved his hand about. What about you? I've got to get Angerus here situated. You can imagine how it'd be if a 60-foot tall saurian creature was seen by the public. Earth, year 2020. Smoke them out. Fire Mazer, cried a voice as a large battleship, the Gotengo, fired a blast of electrical energy across the landscape. Alongside the massive warship was a large mechanical creature, a creature that had long been out of humanity's grasp, until today. It let out a mechanical roar as its mouth blew and a blast of heat fired forth and scorched the earth. Tank batlions and mazer tanks stood on either side of the valley. The sound of laser fire came from the left as another mecha, this one oddly shaped but with a distinctive face. Large glowing eyes and a drill for a nose. The sounds of screaming could be heard as various animals ran out of hiding. The forest of Hokkaido burned as the fire ate away at the trees. But these weren't animals. These were kaiju of various sizes and shapes. Ever since the disappearance of the king of monsters, and the deity of Infant Island, mankind had grown confident on its ability to combat the scourge, known as Daikuja. Months after Godzilla's disappearance, G-Force was determined to clean up the other species of Daikuja, until eventually it got to the point that G-Force was no longer a defense force against monster, but an extermination force led by extremists. But there were some who argued that most of the kaiju were innocent, only their king was guilty for his sins against mankind. Eventually G-Force split into its own two factions. SCALE are servants of creatures arriving late to Earth and KX are kaiju extermination. SCALE pleaded with their case to the UN that while only Godzilla was the prime threat, the rest were harmless. They deserved to live in peace due to none of them even going near a human settlement. KX reassured them that there were still threats out there, such as Baragon or Batra, Daikuja that had attacked human settlements in the past, along with Daikuja from outside of Earth, such as King Ghidorah or Hedorah. The UN moved in favor for KX, and ordered the immediate disband of SCALE. In retaliation, SCALE broke into G-Force's base and stole the Garuda and Juggernaut airships. For months they were able to stop KX's plots to kill pockets of innocent Daikuja. That was until Dimension Tide was repaired and fully operational. After they lost the Juggernaut to DT, SCALE's efforts to stop KX diminished. Fear of the weapon capable of shooting a black hole had sunken in at last. With the reinstallment of Dimension Tide, a man named General Gakido had begun what he called Operation Cleanup. He led a long and bloody campaign against the Daikuja, going as far to retrieve the Kiryu from the ocean floor. Without the Shobijin to prevent him, Gakido used the forbidden mecha alongside the Mogera and Gotengo. Look at them run, filthy creatures. On my mark, aim Dimension Tide at this location, let's squash some roaches, said General Gakido as he pulled out a lighter and lit up a cigar. Suddenly there was a roar and on screen, there was an image of what looked like a large armadillo-type monster. It was roaring at the Mogera as it huddled over what looked like babies. Oh, looks like we got ourselves a fighter. Command Mogera to use its spiral grenades and kill it, said Gakido as the tech officers went to work. The Mogera's arms opened up to reveal two spiral-shaped missiles that shot forth and exploded across the hide of the creature. The armadillo creature barked something at the two babies as she turned and charged headlong into the Mogera, shaking the landscape as the robot nearly toppled over. The armadillo creature then jumped up and brought the metal titan to the ground as it began to bite and tear into its armor. Gakido got up from his seat and snarled, "All weapons, open fire," he ordered. Missiles and laser fire erupted from the Gotengo and Kiryu as the armadillo creature roared in pain. Explosions and blood blossomed over its shell as it fell backwards. "Kiryu, finish it," ordered Gakido into a mic. The mechanical dragon roared as it stomped forward. The injured creature roared as it backed away, fighting to the end to protect its offspring. Suddenly from the sky came blasts of purple light, striking across the back of Kiryu as a shriek filled the sky. A dark figure suddenly slammed into Kiryu that sent it to the earth once more. Jagged armor enveloped its entire body. Its 6 legs ended in vicious-looking claws. The flanks of its thorax was decorated with glowing red protrusions. Its eyes were glowing an ominous yellow. The creature's wings were black with red stripes and spots. As he neared his prey, Batra screeched that familiar bird-like screech. "So, he's finally shown himself. The last of the defenders. Order all weapons to focus on Batra. Take him down, now," yelled Gakido. Maser blasts and tank fire filled the air as the Dark Guardian flew across the sky like a dark comet, weaving in and out of the firepower, shooting bolts of purple light from his eyes that incinerated the tank battalions. "Fire Maser cannon," yelled Gakido as a blast of yellow lightning fired from the drill bow of the Gotengo, sending an explosion of lights across the Dark Guardian's exoskeleton. Batra shrieked as it wobbled in the air, before it was suddenly struck by the metal tail of Kiryu. The giant battle moth flew to the earth as Kiryu bent over to pin it to the ground, while Mogera rose up once more and prepared its spiral missiles to finish off Batra. Gakido grinned as Batra struggled to get free, crying out to the winds as Kiryu let out a soulless mechanical roar. And Gakido would see to that by any means necessary. Suddenly, a strange light filled the sky as a beam shot out from the clouds and struck Kiryu. "What the?" started Gakido, but his next question was answered. From the skies came an enormous ship, the Garuda, flagship of SCALE. "Crew of the Gotengo, listen to me. Long have we wondered why mankind has become so cold and distant to the species known as Daikuja. Even its own species. We have seen what you have been doing, KX. Renslaving the African Americans, killing off the Americans, destroying the Hawaiian Islands. Eliminating innocent monsters. But we have learned the truth. That man, General Gakido, is a Zillion," shouted a voice from inside the Garuda. The crew inside the Gotengo suddenly turned to Gakido as he started to laugh. "So, your race has been snooping around, have they? No matter, our grasp upon humankind goes far deeper than you think, human," shouted Gakido as he raised a hand. All the crew members of the suddenly doubled over in pain, then all silently rightened themselves up. Their eyes were glowing red. Batra let out a roar of horror as it shook with anger. "Gakido, what have you done to them?" shouted a youthful voice from the Garuda. "A simple plan. We started a campaign a while back saying that the monsters were harboring horrible die-asses. We offered vaccines to as many people as we could. In truth, we injected them with both Xylan blood, and reblood," said Gakido with a cruel smile. Batra recoiled in horror, as a voice asked, "The reblood?" "Yes. The long-extinct race of warriors is not as dead as we thought. For you humans, we shall recreate them. With the reblood at our side, the Xylans will rule this universe. With the Grand Emperor of the Xylans at the throne. Now slaves, let's take this so-called hero out. Form Super Kiryu," shouted Gakido as the Gotengo started to transform, and Kiryu lifted itself up and prepared for its combination. Mogera likewise started to shift as its lower half started combining with Kiryu. The Gotengo broke in half as the bow attached itself to Kiryu's right arm, and the midsection attached itself to the back. Mogwera's head split in half as the eye cannons settled on either side of Kiryu's shoulders, its arms becoming laser cannons as they inserted themselves into the Gotengo half on Kiryu's back. "Super Kiryu, complete," said a tech officer in a monotone voice. The Garuda and Batra both readied themselves as the newly formed mecha let out a roar. "Fire everything," commanded Gakido. From Super Kiryu came a barrage of laser fire and missiles that literally set the forest surrounding Batra and the Garuda aflame. Both the Garuda and Batra took to the skies as they performed aerial maneuvers to evade most of the attacks, but the hull of the Garuda exploded as one of the laser cannons got a clean hit. "Hang on, we're not done yet. Fire the Rendruum cannons," shouted the Garuda commander as the twin cannons of the Garuda lit up and fired beams of purple radiation at Super Kiryu. Batra likewise fired his prism beams and energy orbs, but both attacks seemed to wash over Super Kiryu's armored coating. "We reinstalled the plasma grenade weapon system into Kiryu, all energy attacks are useless against it." "Fire plasma grenade," commanded Gakido as a burst of yellow lighting erupted from the chest of Super Kiryu. Both the Garuda and Batra were caught in the blast, the Garuda crash landing into the earth, as Batra wobbled in the sky, its wings on fire and smoke covering its hide. "Now, let's clean house," said Gakido as he flipped a switch. "Prepare dimension tide to fire on my mark. Let's dump these suckers into the event horizon." The crew of the Garuda were abandoning ship, scrambling to get away, to fight another day. "Oh no they don't, fire plasma grenade," commanded Gakido as Super Kiryu's chest opened once more, and the blast of energy flew forth. The crew of the Garuda gasped in horror as the beam that would surely incinerate them approached, only for a dark form to appear between them and the beam. Batra let out one final shriek as the blast consumed it, its body shattering into light that blew across the skies. "Oh my god! Batra!" said one of the Garuda crew as the sound of Gakido laughing could be heard from Super Kiryu. "Well, looks like the last of the," started Gakido before the light began to gather again in front of the resistance group, until it reformed into a familiar shape. "An egg." Gakido frowned, he wasn't about to let Batra come back. "Prep the plasma grenade and let's boil us an egg." In a lone house, long since abandoned, stood a lone figure. Decades of disuse had caused dust and grime to cover its figure. A hero from another era, reduced to an antique among this old house. Jet Jaguar, still functional despite these decades of disuse, had secretly improving itself over the years, at the request of its old master's son. "I wish he were more like Mazinger Z. Or Getter Robo. Or any other mecha. He'd be so strong, nobody could beat him to Gorza." And so it spent decades learning everything about this Mazinger Z, and any similar topic that provided it with information. But at the same time it had been keeping an eye out on the world. It knew of this Operation Cleanup. According to its programming, it was made to defend the weak. Humankind was weak, in the face of the monsters. But witnessing this genocide that this General Gakido was committing, who were the real monsters? The time was now. Jet Jaguar decided to return to the world and put its new code named HOT programming to use. No matter the cost, it would protect the weak. It will protect the weak. Jet Jaguar's eyes flashed for first time in decades and began its ascension to the surface. "Sir, I'm getting a massive reading," yelled a tech officer. "Another kaiju?" asked Gakido. "No, it's artificial in the readings." The ground before the entire squadron shook as steam erupted from the ground, and something arose from an underground hatch that had long been unused for years. Gakido stared in awe as the mechanical titan came into view. The sharp pointed head, the red, blue, and white coloring of its armor. The metal face plate that obscured its mouth as its two blue eyes that somehow were filled with so much life, glue brightly. The posture it assumed, arms crossed as if passing judgment on those lesser than it. Is that one of the Ultramen? I thought we exiled them years ago. Yelled Gakido. No. The life form before us is entirely inorganic. Our records show no information about it, said a tech officer. Gakido gritted his teeth and reached for a mic. Unidentified mecha, identify yourself. What came next was completely out of the blue. Turbo Jaguar Punch. It yelled as it raised its fists out, which launched from their sockets and began smashing into the tank battalions and maser cannons. What the hell? Started Gakido before the next attack came, swiftly. Jaguar Beam. It cried out as a blast of yellow energy erupted from its eyes, slamming into Super Kiryu, burning a hole into its chest. Plasma grenade system down. There's fire in the engine room, said a tech officer. The arms then returned to their sockets as the mecha then leapt over to where the Batra egg laid. The humans who saw him out a roar of approval to the aid the mecha was proving. The mecha in turn nodded its head as it assumed a fighting pose. General Gakido of Xylans, for the sins against the innocent and the weak, I decree ye guilty. Spoke a voice from the mecha, an ancient voice, somber and resolute. A.N. The darkness of Orochimaru's lair was nothing compared to the darkness of the prison Ghidorah was entrapped in. Yet, it would wait. The King of Terror would want. Let this human continue to torture him, try and control him. He'd get his chance. Orochimaru marveled as his equipment bubbled and foamed. The cells he extracted from the creature were simply breathtaking, the possibilities with it were limitless. And the information he learned from it after a lengthy interrogation. Yes. But the damn creature was still too stubborn to cooperate. If only there was a way to bring him under his control. Why waste your time with him? Asked a voice. Orochimaru suddenly swung around to find someone sitting in a chair. The man was covered in some sort of blood-red jumpsuit with dark patterns zigzagging around it. Daikaja like him are such a pain in the ass. They always turn on their masters in time. But, I could show you a way to control them, said the man as he was tapping a sort of double-ended staff. His glowing red eyes shined in the darkness. Inside Ghidorah's prison, the King of Terror found himself in fear. For this was the only being in the universe that was feared by kaiju and human alike. Before Orochimaru decided to kill this intruder, he asked, "Tell me, what is your name?" The being in the shadows smiled, "Belial. Ultraman Belial. Or from where I hail, Grand Emperor Belial."